A woman speaks truth to power. A ballroom erupts, and one night of defiance destroys everything she's ever known, but awakens something she never expected. If you're ready to witness a story of courage, fire, and forbidden alliances in a world where one wrong word can ruin you forever, stay until the end. And don't forget to hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. The chandeliers blazed like captured stars above the Thornfield Manor ballroom, their light spilling across silk gowns and diamond tiaras in waves of calculated brilliance. Every candle flame stood perfectly still. Every conversation hummed at the exact volume of practiced elegance. This was a world built on control, where power whispered instead of shouted, where ruin arrived wrapped in velvet and delivered with a smile. Elara Whitmore stood near the edge of it all, a glass of champagne growing warm in her gloved hand. She hated these events, hated the performance of it, the suffocating predictability, the way everyone moved like chess pieces across a board someone else controlled. At 23, she'd been to enough of these gatherings to know the rules by heart. Smile without meaning it, laugh without sound, speak without saying anything that mattered. Tonight, she'd already broken 2 of those rules. "You look positively murderous, darling," her younger sister Beatrice murmured, appearing at her elbow with the grace of a swan and the knowing smirk of a cat. "Whatever are you plotting?" "Escape," Elara said flatly. "Possibly arson." Beatrice's laugh was genuine, too loud for the room, earning them a few disapproving glances from the matrons clustered near the refreshment table. "Mother will have your head if you cause another scene." "Then Mother should stop dragging me to these mausoleums dressed as parties." "It's called society, Elara. Some of us actually enjoy it." "Some of us have lower standards." Beatrice swatted her arm, but her smile didn't fade. At 19, she still believed in the fairy tale, that these glittering evenings would lead somewhere magical, that the right dress, the right dance, the right words would unlock some golden future. Elara had stopped believing in fairy tales around the same time she'd learned to read estate ledgers and realized how many families were drowning while aristocrats played dress-up. "Oh, look," Beatrice breathed, her entire posture shifting. "He's here." Elara didn't need to ask who. The change in the room's energy announced it like a trumpet blast, conversations pausing mid-sentence, heads turning with the subtlety of flowers following the sun. Duke Adrian Blackthorne had arrived. He moved through the crowd like winter itself had taken human form, all sharp lines and controlled power wrapped in midnight black formal wear that probably cost more than her family's annual income. His dark hair was swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, high cheekbones, a jaw that looked like it had never softened into a genuine smile, and eyes the color of steel in December, cold, calculating, completely untouchable. "God, he's beautiful," Beatrice whispered. "He's a tyrant," Elara corrected. "He's the most powerful man in 3 counties, which is precisely why he's a tyrant." Adrian Blackthorne controlled more land, more resources, more lives than any other nobleman in the region. His estate stretched from the northern forests to the coastal cliffs, a territory he ruled with the warmth of an ice storm and the mercy of a tax collector. Efficient, ruthless, and utterly indifferent to anything that didn't serve his interests. People feared him, which meant they also sought his favor. Elara watched as Lord Pemberton practically tripped over his own feet, rushing to greet the Duke. Lady Ashford positioned herself directly in his path, her daughter thrust forward like a sacrificial offering. Even the musicians seemed to play softer, as if the very air around Adrian Blackthorne demanded deference. "Pathetic," Elara muttered. "Practical," Beatrice countered. "One dance with him could change a family's fortune. One conversation with him could freeze your soul." She'd met him exactly once before, at a similar gathering 2 years ago. He'd looked through her like she was made of glass. No, like she was simply empty space he needed to walk through. The encounter had lasted perhaps 30 seconds. She'd disliked him for 29 of them. The 30th second, she'd decided he was everything wrong with their world wrapped up in expensive tailoring. "Miss Whitmore." Elara turned to find Lord Pemberton's son, Geoffrey, bowing with the enthusiasm of a puppy that had just learned a new trick. He was sweet, harmless, and profoundly boring, the human equivalent of unseasoned porridge. "Geoffrey," she acknowledged. "I was hoping, that is, I wondered if you might. The next dance, perhaps? I'm not dancing tonight. Oh. His face fell like a deflated souffle. Of course. I understand. Perhaps some refreshment then? Or a walk in the gardens? They've lit the paths with lanterns. It's quite… Geoffrey, Beatrice interrupted smoothly, linking her arm through his with practiced grace. I would absolutely love to see those lanterns. Elara's being dreadfully antisocial tonight. You'd be rescuing me from her terrible mood. She shot Elara a look that clearly said, You're welcome, as she led the grateful Geoffrey away. Elara lifted her champagne in a silent toast to her sister's diplomatic skills, then immediately regretted it as the movement caught someone's attention. Elara Whitmore. The voice belonged to Caroline Hartford, whose smile had all the warmth of a snake sizing up a mouse. Still lurking in corners, I see. How very consistent of you. Two other young women flanked Caroline like matching bookends, Victoria Ashford and Margot Wells, both armed with fans and poisonous good manners. Caroline, Elara said evenly. Still traveling in a pack, I see. Safety in numbers? Caroline's smile sharpened. I prefer to think of it as quality company, though I suppose you wouldn't know much about that, would you? Your dance card must be terribly lonely. My dance card is intentionally empty. I have standards. Standards? Victoria's laugh was like breaking glass. Is that what we're calling it now? How charming. Margot leaned in with false concern. I heard your mother has been quite persistent in securing invitations this season. It must be exhausting, trying so hard to maintain relevance. The jab landed exactly where it was meant to. The Whitmore family name still opened doors, but barely. Their estate was hemorrhaging money. The lands were productive enough, but too small to weather bad harvests or unexpected expenses. They needed connections, needed alliances, needed exactly what Elara refused to play the game to get. My mother's social calendar is her own concern, Elara said coolly, though I'm touched by your investment in our family's affairs. Do you keep notes? Perhaps a journal? Dear Diary, today I wasted an hour caring about people more interesting than myself. Caroline's face flushed. You little ladies. The voice cut through their exchange like a blade through silk, quiet but absolute. They all turned. Adrian Blackthorne stood perhaps 6 feet away, his attention fixed somewhere over their heads, clearly waiting for someone to move out of his path. Caroline practically melted into a curtsy. Your Grace, what an absolute pleasure. We were just moving, Adrian said flatly. His eyes flickered toward them for perhaps half a second, cold, dismissive, already bored. Weren't you? It wasn't a question. Caroline stammered something that might have been words, grabbed her companions, and fled like birds scattering from a hawk's shadow. For one absurd moment, Elara thought Adrian might acknowledge her, might nod, or speak, or demonstrate some basic recognition that she existed as a human being rather than an inconvenient obstacle. Instead, he walked past her without a single glance, as if she were furniture. The familiar anger sparked in her chest, hot and sharp and dangerous. Elara! Her father appeared at her side, his face tight with forced cheerfulness that didn't reach his eyes. Thomas Whitmore had once been a handsome man, but years of worry had carved lines around his mouth and shadows under his eyes. There you are. Come. I need to introduce you to someone. Father, I really don't… Now, Elara. His hand on her elbow wasn't rough, but it was firm, desperate. Please. She let him guide her through the crowd, past clusters of conversation and swirling dancers, toward a group of older men gathered near the terrace doors. Estate owners, by the look of them, men who wore their wealth in their posture and their problems in the tension around their eyes. Gentlemen, her father said, his voice too bright. Allow me to present my eldest daughter, Elara. They turned with varying degrees of interest. She recognized most of them, Lord Ashford, Sir Reginald Thorne, Baron Whitley, and standing slightly apart, watching the proceedings with those glacial eyes, Adrian Blackthorne. Of course. Charmed, Lord Ashford said, though he looked anything but. His gaze swept over her like she was a horse at auction, evaluating, calculating, already finding her wanting. My daughter has quite a head for estate management, her father continued, and Elara felt her stomach drop. No, he wasn't actually doing this. She's been helping me with our accounts for years. Very astute. Very capable. How modern, Baron Whitley said in a tone that made modern sound like a disease. Thomas, Sir Reginald interjected, his voice dropping to something that might have been sympathy or might have been contempt. We were just discussing the Westbrook situation. Terrible business. Her father's face went pale. Yes, terrible. 300 families displaced, the Baron added, shaking his head. All those tenant farms just gone, consolidated into the main estate operations. More efficient, of course, but still, the human cost. The necessary cost, Adrian Blackthorne said quietly. Every head turned toward him. Necessary? Elara's father repeated carefully. The Westbrook lands were poorly managed for decades, Adrian continued, his tone completely neutral, as if discussing the weather or the quality of wine. Small tenant holdings, outdated farming methods, inefficient use of resources. Consolidation was inevitable. The alternative was slow decay. The alternative was people keeping their homes, Elara said. The words were out before she could stop them. Silence crashed over their little group like a wave of ice water. Adrian's eyes found hers for the first time that evening. Really found them. Steel meeting fire. I beg your pardon? His voice was soft, dangerous. Her father's hand tightened on her arm. Elara! 300 families, she pressed on, her heart hammering but her voice steady. Men, women, children. They had homes, livelihoods, communities, and now they have nothing because someone decided efficiency mattered more than people. Elara, that's enough, her father hissed. But she couldn't stop. Months of watching these men congratulate themselves on their clever management while families suffered. Years of biting her tongue at gatherings just like this one. Decades of women being told to smile and stay silent while the world burned around them. Something snapped. Where did they go? She demanded, looking directly at Adrian. Those 300 families. Do you even know? That, Adrian said coldly, is not my concern. Because they're not people to you, are they? They're just, what, numbers on a ledger? Inconvenient inefficiencies to be eliminated? They are farmers who could not adapt to changing economic realities. They are human beings who were thrown off their land. Elara! Her father's voice cracked like a whip, but she barely heard him. The ballroom had gone quiet. Not the comfortable hush of elegant conversation, but the terrible silence of a crowd scenting blood in the water. Every eye was on them, every ear straining to catch each word. Adrian Blackthorne took one step closer, just a one, but it changed everything, the air, the space, the power dynamic. Up close, he was even more imposing than from a distance. Taller, harder, his eyes were chips of winter ice. Miss Whitmore, he said, each word carefully enunciated. I understand you have opinions. That's quite novel in a woman. But perhaps you might reserve your amateur economic theories for settings where they won't embarrass your family quite so publicly. The insult landed like a slap. Amateur? She laughed, sharp and humorless. I've studied those estate reports. I know what consolidation actually means. It means profit for men like you and destitution for everyone else. It means choosing money over morality. It means survival, Adrian countered. The old ways are dying. Estates that don't modernize will fail. Should I bankrupt myself maintaining an inefficient system out of misplaced sentimentality? I'm not suggesting sentimentality. I'm suggesting humanity. Then you're suggesting failure. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in those cold eyes, contempt, maybe, or disappointment that she wasn't worth more of his time. The world doesn't reward soft hearts, Miss Whitmore. It devours them. And men like you do the devouring. Men like me, he said softly, keep the world running while idealists like you complain about the cost. We make the hard choices. We bear the weight of reality. And we certainly don't waste time explaining ourselves to sheltered young women who mistake passion for insight. The crowd was utterly silent now, watching, judging. Adrian's gaze swept over her one final time, dismissive, final. You want to know what I think, Miss Whitmore? His voice carried across the ballroom, clear and cutting. I think you are exactly the kind of woman no sensible man should ever marry. Too opinionated, too impulsive, utterly lacking in the grace and discretion that makes a proper wife. He paused, letting the words sink in. You would be nothing but a liability, a constant embarrassment, and any man foolish enough to bind himself to you would spend his life regretting it. Then he turned and walked away, just like that, as if she were nothing, as if the entire exchange had been a minor inconvenience, already forgotten. The silence held for perhaps 3 more seconds. Then the whispers began. They started as a murmur, a rustle of silk and scandalized gasps. Within moments, they'd become a roar. Every conversation in the ballroom suddenly involved her name. Elara Whitmore. Did you hear what she said? To the Duke? In front of everyone? Unsuitable. Unmarriageable. Ruined. She stood frozen, watching Adrian's retreating back, feeling the weight of 300 eyes pressing down on her like stones. Her father's face had gone from pale to gray. What have you done? He whispered. Elara, what have you done? She didn't have an answer. Beatrice materialized beside her, grabbing her hand. We need to leave. Now. But Elara couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't process what had just happened. She'd spoken truth to power, and power had destroyed her for it. The carriage ride home was a study in silence. Her father stared out the window, his jaw working like he was chewing words too bitter to swallow. Her mother, who had witnessed the entire debacle from across the room, held herself rigid as a statue, her hands folded in her lap so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Beatrice sat pressed against Elara's side, her usual cheerfulness extinguished like a snuffed candle. Only when they were safely inside their townhouse, doors locked, servants dismissed, did the explosion come. Do you have any idea, her mother began, her voice shaking with fury barely contained, what you've done to this family? Catherine, her father started. No, Thomas. She needs to hear this. Catherine Whitmore's face was flushed, her elegant composure shattered. That man you just publicly humiliated, controls half the banking interests in this region. His word could destroy us. One conversation with the right people, and we'd lose everything. He's already destroying people, Elara shot back. I just pointed it out. You embarrassed him in front of the entire aristocracy. I told the truth. The truth, her mother laughed, high and brittle. The truth doesn't matter, Elara. Influence matters. Power matters. Connections matter. And you just burned every single one we had. They weren't worth keeping if they required silence in the face of injustice. Her father made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Injustice, God help us. Elara, we are drowning. Our creditors are circling. We have perhaps 6 months before we lose the estate entirely. 6 months, and your mother has been working miracles just to keep us in society long enough to… He cut himself off. To what? Elara demanded. To marry me off? To sell me to the highest bidder like I'm livestock? To survive, her father roared, and the sound was so shocking that everyone froze. Thomas Whitmore didn't yell, didn't raise his voice, didn't show cracks. But now, standing in their drawing room with the weight of impending ruin on his shoulders, he crumbled. We needed alliances, he said quietly, the fight draining out of him. Marriages, connections. Your mother has been cultivating relationships for months, trying to position Beatrice, for matches that could save us. And tonight, his voice broke. Tonight, you made that impossible. The truth of it settled over Elara like a shroud. No one will marry you now, her mother said flatly. Not after what Blackthorn said. Not after that scene. You're ruined, Elara, completely ruined, and you've dragged all of us down with you. Beatrice's hand found hers squeezing tight. There has to be another way, Elara whispered. There isn't. Her father sank into a chair, suddenly looking every one of his 50 years. We're finished, unless… He trailed off, exchanging a look with his wife. Unless what? Elara pressed. Her parents shared another glance, the kind of silent communication that came from decades of marriage and mutual desperation. There's been an inquiry, her mother said slowly, about you, from Lord Victor Hale. The name meant nothing to Elara. Who? He's newly arrived from the northern estates, her father explained. Wealthy, very wealthy, titled unmarried. He made his interest known to your father 3 weeks ago, her mother added. We were considering it, but we had hoped for better options. Now there were no options. Elara's stomach turned. You're selling me. We're saving the family, her mother corrected coldly. All of us. Your father, myself, Beatrice, the servants who've been with us for decades. Everyone depends on us, Elara, and you just made this our only choice. I won't. You will. Her mother's voice cut like glass. Because if you don't, we lose everything. And that will be on your conscience, your responsibility, your fault. The weight of it pressed down until Elara couldn't breathe. I'll arrange a meeting, her father said quietly, with Lord Hale. He's hosting a dinner party in 2 days. We'll attend. You'll be charming, you'll be agreeable, and you'll fix what you broke tonight. And if I refuse? Then we're done, her mother said simply. All of us. Elara didn't sleep that night. She lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the evening in her mind. Adrian Blackthorne's cold eyes, his cutting words, the way the entire ballroom had turned against her like a pack of wolves scenting weakness. You are exactly the kind of woman no sensible man should ever marry. The words burned like acid, because he was right. Not about her value. She knew her worth, knew her mind was as sharp as any man's in that ballroom, but about the consequences. She'd broken the rules, stepped outside the careful boundaries that kept women safe in their world. And now she was paying the price. Her family was paying the price. As dawn broke over London, Elara made herself a promise. She would attend Lord Victor Hale's dinner party. She would smile. She would be charming. She would do whatever it took to save her family from the ruin she'd brought down on them. But she wouldn't forget what she'd seen tonight. The fear in those men's eyes when Adrian Blackthorne spoke. The casual cruelty with which he'd dismissed 300 families. The way power worked in their world. Absolute, unquestioning, crushing anyone who dared to challenge it. She'd been foolish to speak out, but she hadn't been wrong. And somewhere in the cold morning light, Elara Whitmore understood something that would change everything. She was trapped in a world where truth was dangerous and silence was survival. But she'd already proven she was terrible at staying silent. That meant the real danger was just beginning. Tut. 2 days later, the Whitmore family carriage rolled through the gates of Hale Manor. The estate sat on the outskirts of London, all ivy-covered stone and manicured gardens that probably cost more to maintain than most people earned in a lifetime. Lanterns lined the drive, casting warm golden light across gravel paths. It should have been beautiful. Instead, Elara felt like she was approaching a prison. Remember, her mother hissed as they climbed the steps to the main entrance, you are charming. You are agreeable. You smile and you nod, and you make him believe you're everything he wants. And what does he want? Elara asked. A wife, her father said quietly. That's all that matters. But it wasn't all that mattered. Not really. Because as they stepped into the entrance hall, all polished marble and expensive artwork, Elara caught the expression on one of the servants' faces. Fear. Just for a moment, just a flicker. But it was there. And somewhere deep in her gut, instinct whispered a warning she couldn't quite name. Lord Victor Hale appeared at the top of the grand staircase like an actor making an entrance. He was handsome in the conventional way, golden-haired, broad-shouldered, with a smile that belonged on theater posters. Thomas! Catherine! His voice boomed with practiced warmth. Welcome, welcome. And this must be the famous Miss Elara. Famous? Right. Because everyone in London now knew her as the girl who'd committed social suicide in front of the Duke of Blackthorne. Victor descended the stairs with athletic grace, taking her hand and bowing over it with exaggerated courtesy. I've heard such intriguing things about you. I imagine you have, Elara said evenly. His smile widened. A woman with spirit, how refreshing. Come, dinner is nearly ready. We have other guests joining us, nothing too formal. I thought you might enjoy a more intimate setting. He offered his arm. Elara took it,
ignoring the way her skin crawled at the contact. The dining room was indeed intimate, set for perhaps 12 people. And as they entered, Elara recognized most of the faces already assembled: Lord and Lady Pemberton, Geoffrey, looking uncomfortable in formal wear, several other minor nobilities she'd seen at various gatherings, and standing near the fireplace, glass of wine in hand, watching her with those cold, assessing eyes, Adrian Blackthorne. Her steps faltered. Victor noticed immediately. Ah, yes. His Grace was kind enough to accept my invitation. I thought it might be interesting, given recent events. There was something in his tone, amusement maybe, or calculation. Adrian inclined his head fractionally, an acknowledgement that conveyed absolutely nothing. Shall we sit? Victor suggested smoothly. The dinner was a study in carefully orchestrated torture. Victor positioned himself at the head of the table, with Elara to his right, the place of honor that might as well have been a throne of thorns. Adrian sat directly across from her, 3 seats down, perfectly positioned to witness every moment of her discomfort. The conversation flowed around her like water around stone: politics, property values, the latest scandal involving Lord Pemberton's cousin, and a married woman in Brighton. Victor played the perfect host, charming and attentive, making sure her wine glass never emptied and her plate never stayed full for long. And through it all, Adrian Blackthorne watched. Not obviously, not even frequently. But every time Elara glanced up, his eyes were there, cool, distant, analyzing. "Miss Whitmore," Victor said during a lull in conversation, "I understand you have quite an interest in estate management." Every head turned toward her. Yes, she managed. "I've studied it."
"Studied it," Victor repeated, as if the words were delightful. How wonderfully unconventional. What prompted such an unusual pursuit? "Necessity," Elara said honestly. "Our estate is small. We can't afford mistakes." "Ah, necessity, the mother of all invention." Victor leaned back in his chair, his smile never wavering. "And what have your studies taught you about tenant relations, given recent discussions on the subject?" The barb was expertly delivered, subtle enough to seem like innocent inquiry, pointed enough to draw blood. Across the table, Adrian's expression didn't change, but she saw his fingers tighten fractionally on his wine glass. "I've learned," Elara said carefully, "that successful estate management requires balancing multiple priorities. Profit, yes, but also sustainability, community, long-term stability." "How idealistic," Lady Pemberton murmured. "How impractical," another guest added. Victor's eyes gleamed. "And do you believe Duke Blackthorne's approach lacks these qualities?" The room went silent. Every fork stopped moving, every breath held. It was a trap. Obviously a trap. Victor was offering her rope to hang herself with, right here in front of the same man who'd already destroyed her reputation once. Elara met Adrian's gaze directly. "I believe," she said slowly, "that different estate managers have different priorities. The Duke values efficiency and profit. That's his right. Others might value different things. Neither approach is inherently wrong. They simply reflect different philosophies." It was the most diplomatic answer she'd ever given in her life, and it tasted like ash. Adrian's expression remained neutral, but something shifted in those cold eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or disappointment that she'd chosen cowardice over conviction. Victor laughed, too loud, too bright. "Well said. Diplomacy from a woman who just days ago was all fire and fury. You're full of surprises, Miss Whitmore." The dinner continued. More courses appeared and disappeared. More wine flowed. More meaningless conversation filled the spaces between eating. And through it all, Elara felt like a butterfly pinned to a board, being examined from every angle. When the meal finally ended, the men withdrew for brandy and cigars, while the women retired to the drawing room for tea and gossip. Elara found herself trapped on a settee between Lady Pemberton and Victor's sister Margaret, a sharp-featured woman who smiled like she was perpetually in on a joke no one else understood. "You must be so pleased," Margaret said, stirring her tea with delicate precision. "My brother rarely shows such interest in a lady. You've quite captured his attention." "Has he?" Elara asked neutrally. "Oh, yes. He's been asking about you for weeks, ever since he arrived in London." Margaret's smile sharpened. "Though I suppose after your little performance at the Thornfield Ball,
He might be the only gentleman still willing to consider you. The clause came out so smoothly, wrapped in such sweet tones. Margaret? Lady Pemberton chided half-heartedly. Oh, I mean no offense, Margaret laughed. I'm simply being practical. Society can be so unforgiving of scandal. But Victor has always been broad-minded about such things. There was something in the way she said it, something that made Elara's instincts scream. Your brother is very kind, Elara said carefully. Kind. Margaret tested the word like wine she wasn't sure about. Yes, I suppose that's one word for it, though his first wife might have chosen different vocabulary. The room went very still. Margaret! Lady Pemberton actually looked shocked. That's quite enough. I'm only speaking truth, Margaret said innocently. Isabel is dead. It's not slander to mention her. It's inappropriate, another woman hissed, but the damage was done. The words hung in the air like smoke. First wife. Dead. I should... Elara stood abruptly. Excuse me, I need some air. No one stopped her as she fled the drawing room. The hallway was cooler, darker, blessedly empty. Elara pressed her back against the wall, forcing her breathing to slow. First wife. Dead. It didn't mean anything. People died. Illness, childbirth, accidents. Death was common enough in their world, but the way Margaret had said it, the looks on the other women's faces, fear again. That same flicker she'd seen in the servant's eyes. Running away? Elara spun. Adrian Blackthorne stood at the far end of the hallway, brandy glass in hand, watching her with that same unsettling intensity. Taking air, she corrected sharply. Not that it's your concern. Nothing about you is my concern, he agreed. And yet here we are. Yes, here we are. At a dinner party you had no reason to attend, watching a disaster you helped create. His eyebrow lifted fractionally. I helped create? You destroyed my reputation. You destroyed your own reputation by speaking out of turn. I spoke truth. You spoke foolishly, Adrian corrected, moving closer with that predatory grace. Truth without power is just noise, Miss Whitmore. A lesson you learned quite publicly. She wanted to hit him, wanted to scream, wanted to do anything except stand here feeling like a butterfly pinned to a board for the second time that evening. Why are you here? She demanded instead. Hale invited me? That's not an answer. Adrian studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. No, he said finally. It's not. Then he turned and walked away, leaving her alone in the hallway with more questions than answers and a growing certainty that something was very, very wrong. When she returned to the drawing room, Victor was waiting. There you are. His smile was bright as sunlight. I was beginning to worry. Come, let me show you the gardens. They're quite spectacular by moonlight. It wasn't a request. He offered his arm, and Elara took it because refusing would cause a scene, and she'd already caused enough scenes for one lifetime. The gardens were spectacular, winding paths between sculpted hedges, fountains catching moonlight like captured stars, roses blooming in carefully tended beds. It should have been romantic. Instead, Elara felt like she was walking through a beautiful cage. You handled yourself well tonight, Victor said as they strolled. That question about tenant relations, it could have been disastrous, but you showed remarkable restraint. I'm learning, Elara said quietly. Yes, you are. His hand covered hers where it rested on his arm. I like that about you. Intelligence, fire, but also the wisdom to know when discretion serves better than defiance. Is that what you want in a wife? Discretion? Among other qualities. They'd reached a secluded corner of the garden, screened by tall hedges. Victor turned to face her fully, his expression serious. I'll be frank, Miss Whitmore. I know your family's situation. I know you need this match as much as I want it. At least he was honest about the transaction. And what do you want? Elara asked. A partner. A woman of intelligence and breeding who can manage an estate, host gatherings, provide heirs. His hand came up to cup her cheek, possessive, proprietary. You are exactly what I need. Not what he wanted. What he needed. The distinction made her skin crawl. And in return, Victor continued, your family's debts disappear. Your father keeps his estate. Your sister gets a proper season with all the advantages my wealth can provide. Everyone wins. Except me, Elara whispered. His smile didn't waver. You get security, protection, a position in society that your recent scandal should have made impossible. That's not nothing, Elara. He used her first name like he already owned it. I need time to consider, she said. Of course, but not too much time. I'm not the patient sort. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone in a gesture that might have been tender but felt like a threat. Your family needs an answer soon. Don't keep them waiting. Then he kissed her. It wasn't violent, wasn't forceful, but it also wasn't a request. His lips pressed against hers with the certainty of ownership, claiming something that hadn't been offered. Elara stood frozen, every instinct screaming to pull away, to run, to fight. But she didn't, because fighting meant losing everything, and she'd already lost too much. When Victor finally pulled back, his smile was satisfied. I think we'll do very well together, he said. Don't you? Elara couldn't answer, couldn't speak, could only nod like a puppet on strings while everything inside her screamed that this was wrong, wrong, wrong. But wrong didn't matter. Survival mattered. And survival, it seemed, came with a price written in Victor Hale's smile and sealed with a kiss that tasted like poison. The morning after Victor's dinner party arrived with gray skies and the kind of cold drizzle that soaked through everything. Elara stood at her bedroom window, watching water streak down the glass, and tried to convince herself that the tightness in her chest was just the weather. It wasn't working. You've been standing there for an hour. Beatrice's voice came from the doorway, soft with concern. She'd already dressed for the day, a pale blue morning gown that made her look younger than 19, more fragile than Elara wanted to acknowledge. Just thinking, Elara said. About Lord Hale? Among other things. Beatrice crossed the room, her footsteps whisper quiet on the carpet. When she reached the window, she didn't look at Elara, just stared out at the rain like she could read answers in the patterns it made. Mother says he's going to propose, Beatrice said finally. Father's already discussing settlement terms. I know. Are you going to accept? The question hung between them like smoke. Do I have a choice? Elara asked. There's always a choice. No, there really isn't. Elara turned to face her sister properly. You know what's at stake. The estate. Father's creditors. Your season. Everything depends on this match. Then everything is built on rotten foundations, Beatrice said quietly, and the bitterness in her voice was startling. If our family's survival requires you to marry a man who makes your skin crawl, then maybe we deserve to fall. I've seen how you look at him, Elara. Like he's something dangerous pretending to be harmless. Like a snake in a garden. Beatrice's hands twisted in her skirts. And I've heard things. Whispers. About his first wife. Elara's stomach dropped. What whispers? That she was terrified of him. That she tried to leave twice before she died. That the circumstances were suspicious. Suspicious how? No one will say exactly. But the servants who worked at his northern estate? They won't talk about it. And the few who do, Beatrice shuddered. They get this look, like they're remembering something they wish they could forget. The fear Elara had seen flickering in faces at Hale Manor suddenly made terrible sense. It's probably just gossip, Elara said, trying to convince herself as much as Beatrice. Rich men always attract scandal, especially when their wives die young. Maybe, Beatrice didn't sound convinced. Or maybe you should trust your instincts. You've always had good instincts. My instincts told me to speak out against Blackthorn, Elara pointed out. Look how well that turned out. You were right, though, about the tenant families, about everything. Being right doesn't pay creditors. A knock at the door interrupted them. One of the maids, Jenny, young and nervous, poked her head in. Miss Elara, your father requests your presence in his study. There's a visitor. Something in the way she said visitor made Elara's pulse quicken. Who? The Duke of Blackthorn, miss. The room seemed to tilt sideways. What? Beatrice breathed. He arrived 10 minutes ago, Jenny continued, wringing her hands. Your father is with him now. He asked that you join them immediately. Elara's mind raced. Adrian Blackthorne, here at their house. Nothing good could come from this. Tell father I'll be down shortly, she managed. Jenny bobbed a curtsy and fled. Beatrice grabbed Elara's arm. What does he want? I have no idea. Maybe he's come to apologize. Elara laughed, sharp and humorless. Men like Adrian Blackthorne don't apologize. They summon, they command, they destroy, but they don't apologize. Then why is he here? That's what I intend to find out. 15 minutes later, dressed in a severe gray morning gown that felt like armor, Elara descended the stairs toward her father's study. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but she kept her spine straight and her expression neutral. Whatever Adrian Blackthorne wanted, she wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her rattled. The study door was closed. She could hear voices inside, her father's anxious tones, and underneath it, Adrian's cool baritone like ice water flowing over stone. Elara knocked once, sharply. Come in, her father called. She pushed open the door. Adrian Blackthorne stood near the fireplace, one hand resting on the mantel, looking utterly at ease in surroundings that weren't his. He'd dressed for the weather, dark coat, perfectly tailored, water still beating on the shoulders from the rain outside. His hair was slightly damp, pushed back from his face in a way that made him look even more severe than usual. Those gray eyes found hers immediately. Miss Whitmore, he said. Not a greeting, just an acknowledgement. Your Grace. She matched his tone exactly, cool, distant, revealing nothing. Her father hovered near his desk like a bird uncertain where to land. Elara, the Duke has, that is, he's made an unexpected... I'll explain myself, Thomas, Adrian interrupted smoothly. His gaze never left Elara's face. If you'd give us a moment? It wasn't a request. Her father looked between them, clearly torn between social protocol and paternal protectiveness. I'm not certain that's... The door can remain open, Adrian said. I have no intention of compromising your daughter's reputation any further than I already have. The words should have been apologetic. Instead, they sounded like a simple statement of fact. 5 minutes, her father said finally, retreating toward the door. I'll be just outside. Then they were alone. The silence stretched like pulled wire, taut and dangerous. You have a nerve, Elara said finally, coming to my home after what you did. I have several nerves, Adrian replied, most of them significantly stronger than yours, given what I've built and what you've destroyed through impulsiveness. I destroyed eats. She bit off the words, forcing calm. Why are you here? To discuss Lord Victor Hale. Of all the things she'd expected him to say, that wasn't on the list. Victor is none of your concern, Elara said carefully. On the contrary, he's very much my concern. Adrian moved away from the fireplace, crossing the study with deliberate steps. Tell me, what do you know about Hale's first marriage? That his wife died. That's hardly unusual. The circumstances weren't unusual? Adrian's eyebrow lifted fractionally. You haven't heard about the bruises? The broken arm she suffered 3 months before her death? The servants who testified, quietly, privately, about screams in the night? Elara's blood went cold. Testified to whom? To investigators who were immediately silenced. Hale has connections, money, the kind of influence that makes inconvenient questions disappear. Adrian stopped perhaps 3 feet away from her. His wife's death was ruled an accident, a fall down the stairs, but the physician who examined her body found injuries inconsistent with that story. Why are you telling me this? Because your family is negotiating a marriage contract with him. Again, why do you care? The question seemed to genuinely perplex him. His expression flickered just for a moment with something that might have been uncertainty. I don't know, he admitted finally. Logic suggests I shouldn't. You're nothing to me, a foolish girl who spoke out of turn and paid the price. Your choices are your own. Then leave, Elara said. Let me make them. I can't. Why not? Because... He stopped, started again. Because you were right. The words fell between them like stones into still water. What? Elara breathed. At the Thornfield Ball. About the tenant families. About the human cost of consolidation. Adrian's jaw tightened. You were right, and I was cruel in dismissing you. That cruelty has been troubling me. Troubling you, Elara repeated slowly. So you've come to assuage your conscience by warning me away from a dangerous man? How noble! I've come to offer you an alternative. The world seemed to stop spinning. What alternative? Elara demanded. Adrian took a breath, the first time she'd seen him do anything that suggested actual human emotion beneath that frozen exterior. Marry me instead. For a moment, Elara genuinely thought she'd misheard him. The words didn't make sense. Couldn't make sense. You what? A marriage of convenience, Adrian clarified quickly. Nothing romantic. A strategic alliance? Your family gets the financial security they need. You get protection from Hale. I get... He paused. A wife who isn't afraid to challenge me when I'm wrong. You called me unmarriageable, Elara said faintly, in front of everyone. You said no sensible man would want me. I was angry and wrong. His expression remained neutral, but something in his voice had changed, softened, maybe, or fractured. You spoke truth that needed speaking. I punished you for it because it was easier than examining my own actions. That was unworthy of me. So this is penance? You're sacrificing yourself to fix your mistake? I'm offering a practical solution to a dangerous situation. By trapping yourself in marriage to a woman you despise? I don't despise you, Adrian said quietly. I find you unsettling. You see things I'd prefer remained hidden. You question systems I've spent years building. You represent everything unpredictable and uncontrolled in a world I've worked very hard to order. That's not exactly a ringing endorsement. It's honest. He met her eyes directly. I'm not offering love, Miss Whitmore. I'm offering safety, security, and freedom from a man who will hurt you. You don't know that, Hill? Yes, I do. Adrian's voice went cold again, but not dismissive. Certain. I've seen the pattern. I've investigated. Hale targets women in vulnerable positions, women whose families are desperate enough not to ask questions. His first wife came from minor nobility on the verge of bankruptcy. Sound familiar? It did. Horribly, terribly familiar. Why would you help me? Elara whispered. After everything. After I humiliated you. You didn't humiliate me. You challenged me. There's a difference. Adrian's hands flexed at his sides, the first genuinely uncertain gesture she'd seen from him. And perhaps I'm tired of being the villain in every story. Perhaps I'd like to be, something else. The vulnerability in those words was startling. This is insane, Elara said. Yes. My family won't agree. They need Hale's money. I have significantly more money than Hale. Your father's debts would disappear. Your sister would have the finest season London's ever seen. And you would have autonomy within our arrangement, separate households if you prefer, your own finances, freedom to pursue whatever interests you choose. Why? The question burst out of her. Why would you give me all that? Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Because, he said finally, you looked at me in that ballroom and saw something worth confronting. Not a title, not power, but a man making choices that hurt people. And instead of staying silent, instead of playing the game like everyone else, you spoke up. His voice dropped. That took courage I'm not certain I possess. And I find I don't want to see that courage destroyed by a monster like Victor Hale. Elara's throat tightened. How do I know you're not the monster? She asked. How do I know this isn't just a different cage? You don't, Adrian said simply. You'll have to trust me, or at least trust that my self-interest aligns with your safety. I have no desire to be married to a terrified, broken woman. That serves no one. So you want a wife who argues with you? I want a wife who thinks, who challenges poor decisions, who might actually make me a better person than I currently am. He paused. Is that so unreasonable? It should have been. Everything about this should have been unreasonable.
But standing there, looking at Adrian Blackthorne, this cold, powerful man who'd just offered her escape from something that terrified her, Elara felt something shift. Not trust, not yet, but possibility. "I need time," she said finally. "You don't have time. Hale will press for an answer within days. And once you're formally engaged to him—" Adrian shook his head. "It becomes much harder to extricate yourself." "Then what do you suggest?" "Let me court you, publicly, starting tonight at the Ashford Musicale. We'll make our interest known. Force Hale's hand. He'll either back off or reveal his true nature. And if he reveals his true nature violently, then I'll handle it." Adrian's expression went hard as winter steel. "I promise you, Victor Hale will not touch you while you're under my protection." "Your protection." Elara tested the words. "That's what this is? Protection. Among other things." "What other things?" Adrian smiled, barely, just a ghost of expression. "I suppose we'll both find out." Before Elara could respond, her father burst back into the study, his face flushed with barely contained panic. "Forgive me, Your Grace, but... Elara, Lord Hale is here. He's in the drawing room. He's asking to speak with you." Of course he was. Adrian's expression didn't change, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "Perfect timing," he said softly. "Shall we give him a show, Miss Whitmore?" "What are you—" But Adrian was already moving, offering his arm with exaggerated courtesy. "Come, let's introduce some competition to Lord Hale's expectations." Elara looked at her father, who seemed frozen between terror and confusion. Then she looked at Adrian's outstretched arm. This was insane, reckless, everything she'd been taught to avoid. But the alternative was Victor Hale's satisfied smile and bruises hidden beneath long sleeves. She took Adrian's arm. "Let's give him hell," she said quietly. Adrian's smile widened, just a fraction. "Now you're speaking my language." They walked into the drawing room like they were entering a battlefield. Victor Hale stood near the window, perfectly composed in expensive morning wear, holding a bouquet of white roses that probably cost more than Jenny's monthly wages. He turned as they entered, his smile bright and welcoming. Then he saw Adrian. The smile didn't fade. Victor was too well trained for that. But something shifted in his eyes. Something calculating and cold. "Your Grace," he said smoothly. "What an unexpected pleasure." "Hale." Adrian's acknowledgement was barely civil. "I didn't realize you made social calls so early. I wanted to speak with Miss Whitmore about our upcoming engagement." Victor's emphasis on "our" was deliberate, possessive. "Engagement?" Adrian's eyebrow lifted. "How curious. I was under the impression Miss Whitmore hadn't accepted any proposals yet." "A formality," Victor said, his smile never wavering. "We've reached an understanding, haven't we, Elara?" The use of her first name, that presumptuous intimacy, made her skin crawl. "Actually," Elara heard herself say, "I've been reconsidering." The room went very still. Victor's smile finally flickered. "Reconsidering?" "Yes. Your offer was generous, but I've received another option, one I'm finding quite compelling." "Another option." Victor's gaze cut to Adrian like a knife. "I see." "The Duke has expressed interest in courting me," Elara continued, her voice steadier than she felt. "Properly, publicly. And I've decided to accept." "Have you?" It wasn't a question. Victor set down the roses with exaggerated care. "How fascinating. And when did this interest develop, Your Grace? Before or after you publicly destroyed Miss Whitmore's reputation?" "After," Adrian said calmly. "I find I made an error in judgment. Miss Whitmore has qualities I initially undervalued. I'm correcting that mistake." "How convenient. And Miss Whitmore's family's financial situation had nothing to do with this sudden revaluation?" "Her family's situation is precisely why I'm ensuring she has options," Adrian replied. "Real options, not coercion dressed as courtship." Victor's mask finally cracked. For just a moment, pure fury flashed across his handsome features. Then it was gone, replaced by that too bright smile. "I see," he said softly. "Well, competition can be quite invigorating. Perhaps Miss Whitmore would benefit from having choices."
His gaze found Elara's, and there was something in it that made her blood freeze.
Though I wonder if she truly understands what she's choosing. The Duke's reputation for coldness is well earned. Ask anyone who's tried to cross him. I don't need to cross him, Elara said. I need to trust him. There's a difference. Trust, Victor laughed, short and sharp. Yes, trust is so important in marriage, isn't it? Tell me, Your Grace, does Miss Whitmore know about your mistress in Brighton, or the three before her? Does she understand that your idea of marriage is separate households and separate lives? Actually, Elara interjected, he's been quite transparent about the arrangement, unlike some men who hide their true nature until it's too late to escape. Direct hit. Victor's eyes went flat and cold. Careful, Elara. Making accusations you can't prove is dangerous. Is it an accusation if it's true? She countered. Is it true if there's no evidence? Victor stepped closer, his movements smooth but threatening. You should be careful about believing gossip, especially gossip spread by men who want what I have. You don't have anything, Adrian said quietly, and there was steel in his voice now. Except a history of dead women and silenced servants. That's not a foundation for marriage, Hale. That's a confession waiting to happen. Proof, Victor demanded. Show me proof, or withdraw your slander. The proof is being compiled, quietly, carefully, by investigators who can't be bought or intimidated. Adrian's smile was colder than Elara had ever seen it. You should have been more careful about which women you targeted. Some of us actually have the resources to dig into your past. This is absurd. Victor turned to Elara's father, who'd been standing frozen near the doorway. Thomas, surely you won't allow this. We had an agreement. Terms were being negotiated. Her father looked between them, his face pale. If Elara has changed her mind, she's being manipulated. Victor's voice rose for the first time. Can't you see? Blackthorn wants to play hero, and he's using your daughter to polish his tarnished reputation. The moment he's achieved that, he'll discard her. At least I'm offering genuine commitment. Genuine commitment, Adrian repeated. Is that what you call it? The way you were committed to Isabel until she conveniently fell down those stairs? Victor's hand moved, fast, violent, toward Adrian's face. Adrian caught his wrist mid-swing, his grip visibly tight enough to hurt. Don't, Adrian said softly. You'll lose more than your temper. For a moment they stood locked together. Victor's fury barely contained, Adrian's control absolute. Then Victor wrenched his arm free, stepping back with visible effort. This isn't over, he said, his voice shaking with rage. You think you can just take what's mine? You think there won't be consequences? She was never yours, Elara said, surprised by the strength in her own voice. I'm not property to be claimed or traded, or I'm a person making a choice, and I choose not to marry you. The words hung in the air like a declaration of war. Victor looked at her, really looked at her, and what she saw in his expression made every warning, every whisper, every instinct suddenly make terrible sense. He didn't see a person. He saw prey that had just escaped his trap. You're making a mistake, he said quietly. Both of you. And you'll regret it. Then he turned and left, his footsteps echoing through the house like gunshots. The moment the front door slammed, Elara's knees nearly gave out. Adrian's hand found her elbow, steadying her. Breathe, he said quietly. Did I just... She couldn't finish the sentence. You just declared war on a dangerous man, Adrian confirmed. But you're not alone in it. Remember that. Her father finally found his voice. What have you done? Elara, Victor Hale has connections, resources. If he decides to retaliate, then I'll handle it, Adrian interrupted. Holt. That's what this arrangement means. She's under my protection now. Anyone who wants to hurt her goes through me first. And who protects her from you? Her father demanded, some of his old authority returning. Adrian met his eyes steadily. She does. I'm giving her every tool she needs, financial independence, legal protection, social standing. If I fail her, she can leave. That's more than Hale would ever offer. It's more than most men offer, Elara's father said quietly. I'm not most men. Adrian turned to Elara. The Ashford Musicale is tonight. Be ready at 7. We'll make this courtship extremely public, extremely fast, before Hale has time to strategize. And if he retaliates before then,
He won't, not directly. Men like Hale operate in shadows. Forcing him into the light is our best weapon. Adrian's expression softened fractionally. Trust me, just for now. We'll figure out the rest as we go. He bowed, formal, correct, and left before Elara could respond.
The silence he left behind felt enormous. Are you certain about this? Her father asked finally. Elara thought about Victor's eyes when she'd refused him, about the whispers surrounding his dead wife, about the fear in those servants' faces. Then she thought about Adrian's offer. Autonomy, safety, a cage. Yes, but one with an unlocked door. No, she admitted. But I'm more certain about this than I am about Victor Hale, and right now, that's all I have. Her father nodded slowly. Then we move forward. I'll inform your mother. She'll be displeased. She'll be furious, Elara corrected. Yes, that too. He left her alone in the drawing room, surrounded by Victor's abandoned roses and the echo of Adrian's promise. Elara picked up one of the white roses, studying the perfect petals. Beautiful, flawless, and covered in thorns sharp enough to draw blood. She dropped it back into the bouquet and walked away. By evening, the entire household was in controlled chaos. Beatrice helped Elara dress for the musicale, her hands shaking slightly as she fastened the buttons on a deep emerald gown that made Elara's dark hair look almost black. You're really doing this, Beatrice said, courting the Duke. Apparently. Mother is ready to murder you. She's been in her rooms all day, composing angry letters. To whom? Everyone. The Duke, Victor, possibly several members of Parliament. Beatrice managed a weak smile. She's very thorough in her fury. I'm sure she'll forgive me eventually. Will she? Beatrice met her eyes in the mirror. Elara, you're gambling everything on a man who destroyed your reputation 3 days ago. What if this is just another game to him? Then I'll survive it, Elara said. The same way I'll survive everything else. But she wasn't certain she believed it. When Adrian's carriage arrived at precisely 7 o'clock, Elara descended the stairs to find her entire family waiting in the entrance hall like mourners at a funeral. Her mother's expression could have frozen fire. I hope you know what you're doing, Catherine Whitmore said coldly. I don't, Elara admitted. But I know what I'm avoiding. Victor Hale is a gentleman. The Duke is here. Adrian's voice cut in smoothly as he stepped through the doorway. He dressed for the occasion in flawless black formal wear, looking every inch the aristocratic predator he was. And I assure you, Mrs. Whitmore, your daughter's safety and well-being are my primary concerns. Your primary concern is your reputation, Elara's mother shot back. Don't pretend otherwise. You're right, Adrian said simply. My reputation is important to me, which is precisely why I'm doing this properly. Public courtship, formal intentions, everything correct and above reproach. He offered his arm to Elara. She took it, feeling the solid strength beneath the expensive fabric. Shall we scandalize society again? He murmured. Apparently it's my specialty, Elara replied. His smile was slight but genuine. Good. I'm counting on it. The Ashford musicale was even more crowded than the Thornfield ball had been. Every available seat in the grand music room was filled, with additional guests standing along the walls and spilling into the adjacent galleries. The air smelled like expensive perfume and social ambition. When Elara entered on Adrian Blackthorn's arm, the room fell silent. Not the whispered, scandalized silence of the Thornfield disaster. This was different, shocked, confused, trying desperately to reconcile the woman Adrian had publicly denounced with the woman he was now openly courting. They're staring, Elara whispered. Let them, Adrian replied calmly. We're giving them the show of the season. He led her through the crowd with absolute confidence, nodding to acquaintances, acknowledging greetings, and introducing Elara like she was something precious he'd discovered rather than a scandal he'd created. Caroline Hartford nearly dropped her champagne glass when they passed. Geoffrey Pemberton's jaw actually hung open, and in the corner, surrounded by his usual circle of admirers, Victor Hale watched with eyes like chips of ice. He's here, Elara said quietly. I know. Don't look at him. Look at me. She did. Adrian's expression was calm, controlled, giving nothing away. But there was something in his eyes, a fierceness she hadn't seen before. Protection, maybe, or possession. She wasn't entirely sure which scared her more. The musicale began. Some soprano performing pieces Elara couldn't focus on. All she could think about was Victor's stare burning into her back, and Adrian's presence beside her like a shield made of ice and steel. During the intermission, the whispers intensified. Lady Pemberton cornered them near the refreshment table. "Your Grace, Miss Whitmore, how unexpected to see you together." "Is it?" Adrian's tone was perfectly mild. "I find Miss Whitmore remarkably good company. After your comments at the Thornfield ball were hasty and regrettable," Adrian finished smoothly. "I've since had the opportunity to know her better. My initial assessment was flawed." "How magnanimous of you," Lady Pemberton said dryly. Before Adrian could respond, Victor materialized beside them. "Your Grace, Elara." His smile was pleasant, but his eyes were dead. "Enjoying the performance?" "Immensely," Adrian said. "I'm surprised you have time for musicales, given how busy you must be with estate management, all those tenant families to displace, so much efficiency to maintain." The jab was expertly delivered, bringing up the exact issue that had started this entire mess. Adrian's expression didn't flicker. "Actually, I've been reviewing those policies. Miss Whitmore raised some valid concerns. I'm implementing changes." Elara's head snapped toward him. "You're what?" "Reinstating several tenant holdings, providing transition support for displaced families. It's the right thing to do." His gaze found hers. "You were right. I was wrong. It's that simple." The word sent a shock through her system. He was actually listening, actually changing. Victor's smile tightened. "How noble, though I wonder if these sudden reforms have more to do with impressing a lady than actual conviction." "My motivations are my own," Adrian said coldly, "but the results will be the same. People will be helped. Isn't that what matters?" "If you say so." Victor turned to Elara. "I do hope you're not being swayed by empty promises, my dear. The Duke has a reputation for saying whatever serves his interests." "And you have a reputation for dead wives," Elara said quietly. Victor's face went white. Around them, several gasps echoed through the suddenly silent crowd. "Careful," Victor said, his voice shaking. "Slander is a serious accusation." "Truth is a complete defense," Elara countered. For a moment, she thought he might actually strike her. His hand twitched, his jaw clenched, fury radiating off him in waves. Then Adrian stepped between them, subtle but absolute. "I think you should leave, Hale," he said quietly. "Before you do something you'll regret." Victor's laugh was ugly. "Regret? You want to talk about regret? You're going to learn the meaning of that word, Blackthorn. Both of you." Then he turned and walked away, leaving a wake of whispers and shocked faces. Lady Pemberton fanned herself rapidly. "Well, that was intense." "Yes," Adrian agreed. "It was." He took Elara's arm. "We're leaving, now. But the performance is over. For us, anyway. Come." He practically dragged her through the crowd, ignoring questions and stares, moving with single-minded purpose toward the exit. The carriage was waiting outside. Adrian helped her in, climbed in after her, and rapped sharply on the roof. They were moving before Elara could catch her breath. "What just happened?" she demanded. "You just made yourself a target," Adrian said grimly. "Victor Hale doesn't make threats lightly. When he says you'll regret something, he means it." "Then why did you let me—" "Let you?" Adrian's laugh was sharp. "I couldn't have stopped you if I tried. You went straight for his throat. It was either terrifying or magnificent. I haven't decided which." "Both, maybe?" "Probably." The carriage rattled through dark streets, taking them away from the musicale and toward somewhere. Elara wasn't even sure where they were going. "Adrian," she said carefully, using his first name for the first time. "What happens now?" He was quiet for a long moment, his face half shadowed in the dim carriage light. "Now," he said finally, "we prepare for war. Because Victor Hale won't let this go. He'll retaliate. Soon. And we need to be ready." "How do we prepare for someone like that?" Adrian's smile was cold and dangerous. "By being more ruthless than he is.
more strategic, more willing to do whatever it takes to win. Including marriage to someone you barely know? Including that. He met her eyes directly. Are you ready, Elara? Really ready? Because once we commit to this path, there's no going back. Victor will come for you, for your family, for everything you care about. And the only way to stop him is to become someone he can't destroy. And you can help me become that person? I can try. Adrian's expression softened fractionally, but mostly, I think you already are. You just don't know it yet. The carriage stopped. Elara looked out the window and realized they were back at her family's townhouse. Get some rest, Adrian said. Tomorrow, we start building your armor, legal protections, financial arrangements, everything you need to be untouchable. And what do you get out of this? Elara asked. Really? Adrian considered the question seriously. A chance, he said finally, to be someone better than I was. You saw the worst of me at that ball. You called me on it, and instead of hating you for it, I find I'm grateful. So maybe what I get is redemption, or at least a step toward it. He opened the carriage door, helped her down, walked her to her front steps like a perfect gentleman. Then, just before she went inside, he caught her hand. Elara, he said quietly, I need you to promise me something. What? If Victor approaches you, if he threatens you or tries to corner you or makes you feel unsafe in any way, you tell me immediately. Don't try to handle it yourself. Don't try to be brave. Just tell me. Why? So you can fight my battles? So I can fight them with you, Adrian corrected. There's a difference. Elara looked down at their joined hands, his grip firm, but not crushing, warm despite his cold reputation. I promise, she said. He released her hand, stepped back, bowed formally. Then he was gone, disappearing into the darkness in his elegant carriage. Elara stood on the steps, her heart racing, her mind spinning. She'd just declared war on a monster. But she wasn't alone in it, and somehow, impossibly, that made all the difference. Inside the townhouse, Elara found her mother waiting in the entrance hall like a statue carved from ice and fury. Do you have any idea what you've done tonight? Catherine Whitmore's voice was deadly quiet. You've just made an enemy of one of the wealthiest men in England. He was already an enemy, Elara said, pulling off her gloves. I just stopped pretending otherwise. Pretending keeps us alive. Her mother's composure cracked. Pretending pays our bills and keeps food on our table and saves us from debtor's prison. But no, you had to be honest. You had to speak truth, and now we're all going to pay for your principles. Victor Hale killed his first wife. The words dropped like stones into water. Her mother went pale. You don't know that. I know enough. Bruises, broken bones, servants too terrified to testify. Elara met her mother's eyes. Would you really have sold me to that? Would you have slept soundly knowing what he might do to me? I would have survived, her mother said. We all would have. That's what matters. No, living matters. There's a difference. Catherine's hand cracked across Elara's cheek, sharp and sudden. The slap echoed through the hallway. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then her mother's face crumpled, tears spilling down her cheeks. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. We're drowning, Elara, and I don't know how to save us. Elara touched her stinging cheek, feeling the heat radiating from the mark. Adrian will help. He's promised financial support, legal protections, everything we need. And what does he want in return? A wife who challenges him, who makes him better. Elara laughed softly. I'm not sure which of us is getting the worst deal. Her mother wiped her eyes, some of her steel returning. If you're going to do this, if you're really going to marry the Duke, then you need to be smart about it. Protect yourself. Make sure everything is in writing. Trust nothing that isn't legally binding. I will. And Elara? Her mother's voice softened. Be careful. Men like Blackthorne and Hale, they see people as pieces on a board. Make sure you're the one moving the pieces, not being moved. Upstairs, Beatrice was waiting in Elara's bedroom, perched on the edge of the bed like a bird ready to take flight. Tell me everything, she demanded. So Elara did. The confrontation with Victor, Adrian's cold fury, the whispered threats and public declarations.
When she finished, Beatrice was quiet for a long moment. "You're falling for him," she said finally. "What? No, this is strategic, practical. You used his first name in the carriage." Elara froze. "How did you? You just confirmed it." Beatrice's smile was knowing. "You called him Adrian, not the Duke or His Grace." "Well, Adrian. That doesn't mean... It means something. Maybe not love, not yet, but something." Beatrice took her hand. "Just be careful. The Duke might be better than Victor Hale, but that doesn't make him safe." "Nothing about this is safe," Elara admitted. "Then why are you doing it?" Elara thought about Victor's dead eyes, about 300 displaced families, about speaking truth in a world built on silence. "Because someone has to," she said, "and apparently I'm terrible at keeping quiet." That night, Elara dreamed of fire. Flames consuming everything. The townhouse, the estate, the ballrooms where she'd learned to dance and lie with equal grace. And standing in the center of the inferno, watching it all burn, was Victor Hale with his perfect smile and empty eyes. She woke gasping, heart pounding, sheets twisted around her legs. The clock read 3 a.m. Elara lay in the darkness, listening to the house settle and creak, and tried to convince herself the dream meant nothing. It didn't work. The next morning arrived with gray skies and a letter delivered by special messenger. Jenny brought it to Elara's room, her face tight with worry. "Miss, this just came. The man who delivered it said it was urgent." The envelope was cream-colored, expensive, sealed with red wax bearing Victor Hale's family crest. Elara's hands shook as she broke the seal. "My dear Elara, I hope this letter finds you well, though I confess I'm writing in a state of some distress. Last night's unfortunate exchange has left me deeply concerned, not for myself, but for you. The Duke of Blackthorn is not the man you believe him to be. I have documentation, credible, verifiable documentation, of his dealings that would shock you. Business practices that ruin families. Political manipulations that destroy lives. He is, in every sense, the monster you accused me of being. I'm writing to offer you one final chance to reconsider. Meet me today at the Westbrook Chapel, 2:00. Come alone. I'll show you the evidence I've gathered. Then you can make an informed choice about your future. If you don't come, I'll understand, but know that I'm trying to save you from a man far more dangerous than you realize." Your devoted servant Victor Elara read the letter 3 times, her mind racing. It was a trap. Obviously a trap. But what if it wasn't? What if Victor actually had evidence about Adrian? What if she was trading one monster for another? "Miss?" Jenny's voice was small. "Is everything all right?" "I don't know," Elara admitted. She should tell Adrian. That was the promise she'd made. If Victor approached her, she'd tell him immediately. But what if Victor was right? What if Adrian was using her just like everyone else? The uncertainty gnawed at her. By noon, she'd made a decision. She would go to the chapel, but she wouldn't go alone, not completely. She'd tell someone where she was going, leave a note, something. She scribbled a quick message to Beatrice, sealed it, and left it on her dressing table with instructions for Jenny to deliver it at 3:00 if Elara wasn't back. Then she ordered the carriage and headed for Westbrook Chapel. The chapel sat on the edge of the city, a small stone building surrounded by overgrown gardens and ancient oak trees. It had been abandoned for years, too far from the fashionable districts to be useful, too expensive to maintain, perfect for a private meeting or an ambush. Elara's driver looked uncomfortable as they pulled up to the crumbling entrance. "Miss, are you certain about this? It doesn't look safe." "Wait here," Elara said, climbing down. "If I'm not back in 30 minutes, go fetch the Duke of Blackthorn." "The Duke? Miss, what's—" "Just promise me." The driver nodded reluctantly. 30 minutes. Not a second more. Elara pushed through the chapel's heavy wooden doors. Inside, dust motes danced in shafts of light from broken stained glass windows. Pews lay scattered and broken. The altar was covered in debris. And standing near the front, perfectly composed in expensive traveling clothes, was Victor Hale. "You came," he said, sounding genuinely surprised. "I wasn't certain you would." "You said you had evidence." "I do." Victor gestured to a leather satchel resting on one of the intact pews. Financial records, witness testimonies, everything you need to know about Adrian Blackthorne's real character. Elara moved closer, her footsteps echoing on the stone floor. Show me. Victor opened the satchel and pulled out a sheaf of papers. These are estate records from the Westbrook consolidation. See here? Blackthorne didn't just displace families, he systematically destroyed any who resisted, burned crops, poisoned wells, ensured they had nothing to fall back on. Elara scanned the documents. They looked official, detailed, damning. This could be forged, she said. It could be, but it's not. Victor pulled out more papers. Here, sworn statements from 3 former tenants. And here, bank records showing Blackthorne profited enormously from selling the consolidated land to industrial interests. The evidence was overwhelming. Too overwhelming. Why are you showing me this? Elara demanded. What do you want? I want you to understand what you're getting into. Victor stepped closer. Blackthorne is using you, Elara. He doesn't care about your safety or your family's welfare. He cares about salvaging his reputation, and once he's achieved that, you'll be discarded. And you're different? I'm honest about what I want. His hand came up to cup her cheek, the same gesture he'd used in his garden, possessive and invasive. I want you, not as a prop or a redemption project, as a wife, a partner. Elara jerked away from his touch. Your first wife might disagree with that characterization. Victor's expression didn't change. Isabel was troubled, mentally unstable. The physicians can confirm it. Her death was a tragedy, but not a crime. The bruises? Self-inflicted, part of her illness. He said it so smoothly, so convincingly. I tried to help her. I brought in the best doctors, but some people can't be saved. It was a perfect explanation, rational, reasonable, and Elara didn't believe a word of it. I'm leaving, she said, turning toward the door. Victor's hand closed around her wrist, tight enough to hurt. I don't think so. The chapel doors burst open, but it wasn't her driver. It wasn't Adrian. It was 3 men Elara didn't recognize. Rough-looking, wearing servants' clothes, but moving like soldiers. What is this? Elara demanded, trying to pull free. Victor's grip tightened. Insurance. You've made yourself quite the problem, my dear. Publicly humiliating me, spreading lies about my character, choosing Blackthorne over me. Let me go. I will, eventually. Victor nodded to the men. But first, we're going to have a conversation about choices and consequences, somewhere more private. Terror shot through Elara's system. My driver knows I'm here. If I don't return, your driver is currently unconscious in his carriage. Don't worry, he'll wake up in a few hours with nothing worse than a headache. Victor's smile was pleasant, empty. And by then, you'll be somewhere no one can find you. Elara drove her heel down on his instep, hard. Victor cursed, his grip loosening just enough. She wrenched free and ran. The chapel was a maze of broken pews and debris. She dodged between them, heading for a side door she'd noticed earlier. Behind her, she heard Victor shouting orders, footsteps pounding. She hit the side door at full speed, slamming it open, stumbling into the overgrown garden beyond. A hand grabbed her hair, yanking her back. Elara screamed loud and piercing. The man holding her clamped a hand over her mouth. Quiet, or this gets worse. She bit down hard on his palm. He howled, releasing her. Elara ran again, crashing through bushes, thorns tearing at her dress and skin. The garden backed onto a wooded area. If she could reach the trees, maybe she could hide, wait them out. Something hit her from behind, driving her to the ground. The impact knocked the air from her lungs. Hands grabbed her arms, wrenching them behind her back. Rope bit into her wrists. Got her, one of the men called. Victor appeared above her, barely winded, adjusting his cravat like this was a minor inconvenience. That was foolish, he said calmly. I was going to be reasonable. Now? He crouched down, his face inches from hers. Now I'm going to teach you what happens to women who don't know their place. Elara spat in his face. Victor wiped it away slowly, his expression never changing. Then his hand connected with her cheek. Harder than her mother's slap, hard enough to make her vision blur. Get her to the carriage, he said. Quickly, before someone comes.
They hauled her up, half dragging, half carrying her through the garden toward a black carriage hidden behind the chapel. This was it. Once they got her in that carriage, she was gone. No one would find her. No one would save her. Elara thrashed, kicked, fought with every ounce of strength she had. One of the men cursed as her boot connected with his knee. "Hold her still, damn it! Just get her!" The sound of hoofbeats thundered through the clearing. Everyone froze. A horse burst through the trees, black as midnight, ridden hard, foam flecking its sides. And on its back, face like winter fury, was Adrian Blackthorne. He didn't slow down, didn't hesitate. The horse slammed into the nearest man, sending him flying. Adrian was off the saddle before the animal had fully stopped, moving with brutal efficiency. He drove his fist into the second man's face, bone crunching audibly. The man dropped like a stone. The third one pulled a knife. Adrian kicked it out of his hand, grabbed him by the throat, and slammed him against a tree hard enough that Elara heard the impact from 10 feet away. "Where is she?" Adrian's voice was terrifyingly calm. The man pointed with a shaking hand. Adrian dropped him and turned. His eyes found Elara, taking in the rope, the bruises already forming, the torn dress and bloodied knees. The expression on his face was nothing human. "Blackthorne," Victor said smoothly, stepping between them. "How unexpected, though I suppose I should have anticipated your interference." "Step away from her," Adrian said quietly. "Or what? You'll assault me? In front of witnesses?" Victor gestured to his hired men, the ones still conscious. "I'm simply having a private conversation with my fiancée. Whatever she told you was clearly exaggerated." "She's not your fiancée." "Not yet, but she will be, once she understands her options." Victor's smile widened. "You can't protect her forever, Blackthorne. Eventually, I'll get what I want. I always do." Adrian moved. One moment he was standing 10 feet away. The next, his hands were around Victor's throat, slamming him back against the chapel wall. "You listen very carefully," Adrian said, his voice deadly soft. "Because I'm only going to say this once. If you ever come near her again, I will destroy you. Not quickly, not cleanly. I will dismantle your life piece by piece until you have nothing left but the memory of what you lost. Do you understand me?" Victor's face was turning purple. He managed a strangled nod. Adrian released him, letting him collapse to the ground, gasping. Then he turned to Elara, and the fury in his expression melted into something that looked like fear. "Are you hurt?" His hands hovered over her like he was afraid to touch her. "Did they?" "I'm all right," Elara managed, though her voice shook. "Rope, my wrists." Adrian pulled a knife from his boot and cut through the bonds with swift, careful movements. The moment her hands were free, Elara's legs gave out. Adrian caught her, pulling her against his chest. "I've got you. You're safe." "How did you find me?" "Your sister. She got worried when you left without telling anyone. She found your note and came to me immediately." His arms tightened around her. If I'd been 5 minutes later." "But you weren't." Victor had regained his breath enough to speak. "This isn't over, Blackthorne. You can't prove anything. It's my word against hers. And who do you think society will believe? A respected lord or a ruined woman with a history of wild accusations?" Adrian's expression went cold. "Society will believe the Duke who's about to marry her, who has the resources to investigate every dark corner of your miserable existence, who has connections in Parliament, the judiciary, and the press." He straightened, still holding Elara against him. "Go ahead and try to spin this, Hale. I'll bury you so deep you'll never see daylight again." "You think you're untouchable," Victor spat. "You're not. Everyone has secrets, Blackthorne. Even you." "The difference is my secrets aren't dead wives and kidnapped women." Adrian's voice dropped to something dangerous. "Get out of here. Before I decide killing you is worth the scandal." For a moment, Victor looked like he might actually fight back. Then survival instinct won. He climbed to his feet, adjusted his torn coat, and gestured to his remaining conscious men. "This isn't finished." "Yes," Adrian said flatly. "It is." They watched Victor and his hired thugs retreat through the trees, the black carriage rolling away into the growing dusk. Only when they were completely gone did Adrian's composure crack. "You promised," he said, his voice rough.
You promised you'd tell me if he approached you. I know. I'm sorry. You thought you could handle it alone. You thought you didn't need help. His hands came up to frame her face, careful of the bruise forming on her cheek. You could have died, Elara. Do you understand that? He was going to take you somewhere no one would ever find you. I left a note. I had a plan. Your plan almost got you killed. Adrian's thumb brushed across her cheekbone. Promise me. Really promise me this time. No more secrets. No more trying to protect everyone else while you walk into traps. Elara looked into his eyes, gray and fierce and terrified in a way she'd never seen before. I promise, she whispered. Good. He kissed her forehead. Just a brief press of lips, there and gone. Because I'm not losing you. I've only just found you. The words hung between them, more than strategy, more than convenience, something real. Before Elara could respond, voices echoed through the trees. Your Grace, Miss Whitmore! Her driver appeared, looking worse for wear but conscious, followed by 3 men in the Duke's livery. We came as fast as we could, one of them panted. When we found Thomas unconscious in the carriage, it's handled, Adrian said. Get Miss Whitmore into my carriage, carefully, and send word to her family that she's safe. They moved with military efficiency, wrapping Elara in blankets, helping her into Adrian's elegant vehicle. Adrian rode beside the carriage, his horse keeping pace, his eyes scanning the darkening woods like he expected another attack at any moment. When they reached the Whitmore townhouse, the entire family was waiting. Beatrice burst through the door before the carriage had fully stopped, tears streaming down her face. Elara! Oh, thank heavens, I was so frightened. I'm all right, Elara said, though she was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. I'm all right. Her father appeared, his face gray. What happened? Victor Hale attempted to abduct your daughter, Adrian said flatly. I prevented it. Barely. Her mother made a sound like a wounded animal. He won't try again, Adrian continued. I've made that extremely clear, but to ensure Miss Whitmore's safety going forward, I'm accelerating our timeline. What timeline? Elara's father asked. Adrian turned to Elara. Marry me. Tomorrow. Special license. Everything legal and binding before Hale has time to strategize another attack. The world seemed to tilt. Tomorrow? Elara repeated. I know it's fast. I know it's not how you imagined this happening, but Hale is dangerous and desperate. The moment you become my wife, you're untouchable. No one will risk crossing me to get to you. That's not a reason to marry someone, Elara said faintly. No, but this is. Adrian took her hands, his grip warm and solid. I don't want to lose you. Not to Hale, not to fear, not to anything. Marry me. Let me protect you properly, and maybe, he paused, maybe we'll figure out the rest as we go. Elara looked at him. Really looked at him. This cold, powerful man who'd ridden to her rescue like something from a fairy tale, who'd promised to destroy anyone who hurt her, who was asking her to marry him with bruises still forming on her face and terror still fresh in her memory. It was insane, reckless, everything she'd been taught to avoid. All right, she heard herself say. Tomorrow. Adrian's expression transformed, relief and something that looked almost like joy. Tomorrow, he agreed. Her mother found her voice. This is madness. You can't possibly. There are arrangements to be made. A wedding requires. I'll handle everything, Adrian interrupted. The license, the ceremony, everything. You just need to show up. He turned back to Elara. Get some rest. I'll send a physician to check on you, and guards to watch the house tonight. No one gets near you without going through them first. Then he was gone, riding off into the night, leaving Elara standing in her family's entrance hall trying to process what had just happened. She'd been kidnapped, rescued, and engaged, all in the span of 3 hours. Well, Beatrice said finally, her voice shaky with suppressed hysteria, at least your wedding won't be boring. Despite everything, despite the terror and pain and utter chaos, Elara laughed. The next day dawned cold and bright. Elara stood in her bedroom wearing a hastily altered cream silk gown that had belonged to her grandmother and tried to convince herself this was actually happening. You're shaking, Beatrice said, adjusting the veil with gentle hands.
I'm getting married to a man I've known for less than a week. To escape a man who tried to kidnap you, that's actually quite romantic in a terrifying sort of way. Nothing about this is romantic. No? Beatrice smiled. The way he looked at you last night, like you were the only thing in the world that mattered, that seemed pretty romantic to me. Elara's stomach fluttered. He was just worried, protective. Keep telling yourself that. A knock at the door interrupted them. Jenny appeared, looking flustered. Miss, the Duke's carriage is here, and, well, there's quite a crowd. Elara moved to the window. The street below was packed with people. Neighbors, strangers, society gossips all gathered to witness the scandal of the century. The woman Adrian Blackthorne had publicly denounced, marrying him less than a week later. They're vultures, Beatrice said darkly. They're witnesses, Elara corrected, which is probably the point. The more public this is, the harder it is for Victor to claim it's not legitimate. Smart. Adrian's good at strategy. Is that all he's good at? Elara didn't answer. The ceremony took place at St. Michael's, a small chapel in the fashionable district, hastily decorated with white roses and candles. Adrian must have paid someone a fortune to arrange everything so quickly. When Elara entered on her father's arm, the pews were packed. Caroline Hartford sat near the front, her expression caught between shock and grudging fascination. Lord Pemberton looked bewildered. Geoffrey seemed on the verge of tears. And at the altar, dressed in flawless black formal wear, stood Adrian Blackthorne. He turned as she approached, and the expression on his face stopped her breath. Not cold, not calculating, something almost tender. The ceremony was a blur. Words spoken by a priest, vows exchanged. Adrian's hand warm and solid as he slipped a ring onto her finger, platinum set with emeralds that matched her eyes. I now pronounce you man and wife. Adrian lifted her veil with careful hands. Then he kissed her. Not possessive like Victor's kiss, not invasive or demanding, gentle, almost reverent, like she was something precious he was afraid to break. When he pulled back, his eyes held a question. Elara answered by leaning in and kissing him again, deeper this time, with feeling she didn't have words for yet. The chapel erupted in polite applause. They were married. The wedding breakfast was held at Adrian's London residence, a massive townhouse that made Elara's family home look like a cottage. Guests filled the ballroom, eating expensive food and drinking even more expensive wine while pretending they weren't dissecting every moment of the scandal. Elara stood beside Adrian, accepting congratulations from people who'd been spreading vicious gossip about her just days ago. Hypocrites, she muttered under her breath. Welcome to society, Adrian replied, his hand at the small of her back, where yesterday's scandal becomes today's celebration if the price is right. And what was the price? Me. His smile was slight. They're all terrified of crossing a duke, even one who married a ruined woman. Fear is more powerful than respect. That's cynical? That's reality. Lord Ashford approached, his expression carefully neutral. Your Grace. Your Grace. The second title for Elara still felt strange. Quite the surprise, this wedding. Was it? Adrian asked coolly. Well, given recent events, I realize my initial assessment of my wife was flawed. I'm correcting that error. Adrian's arm came around Elara's waist, proprietary but not aggressive. Any other questions, Ashford? No. No, of course not. Congratulations to you both. He fled like a spooked rabbit. You enjoy that, Elara observed, making them uncomfortable. I enjoy protecting what's mine. I'm not property. No, you're my wife, which is significantly more important. Adrian leaned in, his breath warm against her ear. And speaking of which, we need to discuss our living arrangements. I thought we agreed on separate households. That was before Hale tried to kidnap you. I'm not letting you out of my sight until he's dealt with permanently. Dealt with how? Adrian's expression went cold. There are investigations underway, financial audits, witness testimonies being gathered. Within a month, Victor Hale will be facing criminal charges. Within 2 months, he'll be ruined. And if he retaliates before then, he won't get the chance. I've hired guards, security. No one gets near you without clearance. Adrian's hand found hers, squeezing gently. I know it feels like a cage, but it's temporary. until the threat is neutralized. Elara looked around the ballroom, at the wealth, the power, the careful social dance happening on every side. This was her life now. Duchess. Protected. Caged in silk and emeralds. "Hey," Adrian said softly, tilting her chin up. "Talk to me. What are you thinking? That this is nothing like what I imagined my wedding would be. Is that good or bad? I don't know yet." "Fair enough." He kissed her forehead. "We'll figure it out. Together. That's what partnerships do." Before Elara could respond, Beatrice appeared with 2 glasses of champagne. "Congratulations, sister dear. You're officially a duchess." She handed Elara a glass. "How does it feel?" "Surreal." "Well, get used to it, because according to the gossip mill, you're now the most scandalous woman in London." "I thought I already held that title." "You did, but now you're a scandalous duchess, which is much more interesting." Beatrice grinned. "Own it." The celebration continued for hours. More guests, more champagne, more carefully worded congratulations that barely masked shock. By the time evening fell, Elara was exhausted. Adrian noticed immediately. "We're leaving." "But there are still guests." "They can entertain themselves." He nodded to one of the servants. "The Duchess is retiring. Please ensure no one is disturbed." Then he offered his arm. "Come. I'll show you to your rooms." Elara took his arm, acutely aware of every eye watching them leave. Adrian's residence was even more impressive inside than out. They climbed a grand staircase, walked down hallways lined with art that probably belonged in museums, and finally reached a set of double doors. "Your suite," Adrian said, pushing them open. Inside was a sitting room decorated in deep blues and silver, with a bedroom beyond that looked like something from a palace. A fire crackled in the hearth. Fresh flowers filled crystal vases. "It's beautiful," Elara breathed. "It's yours, completely yours. No one enters without permission, not even me." Adrian gestured to an adjacent door. "My rooms are through there, connected but separate. You can lock the door on your side if it makes you feel safer." "And if I don't lock it?" Something flickered in his eyes. "Then I'll take that as an invitation, eventually, when you're ready." "Not tonight?" "Not tonight. You've been through enough." Adrian reached out, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Get some rest. We'll talk in the morning about next steps." He turned to leave. "Adrian?" He paused. "Thank you," Elara said, "for saving me. For this. For all of it." "You don't need to thank me. You're my wife. Protecting you isn't a favor. It's my job." His smile was slight, though I appreciate the sentiment. Then he was gone, the door closing softly behind him. Elara stood alone in her new room, still wearing her wedding dress, trying to process everything that had happened. 24 hours ago, she'd been kidnapped. Now she was a duchess, married to a man who terrified and intrigued her in equal measure, safe from Victor Hale, but trapped in a different kind of cage. She moved to the window, looking out over London's glittering nightlights. Somewhere out there, Victor was planning his next move. Adrian's investigations might take weeks, and in the meantime, she was a target. A knock at the connecting door made her jump. "Elara?" Adrian's voice. "Are you all right?" She crossed the room and opened the door. He stood in his own sitting room, jacket discarded, shirt partially unbuttoned, looking more human than she'd ever seen him. "I'm fine," she said, "just thinking." "About?" "Everything. Victor, the investigation, what happens next." Adrian stepped closer. "What happens next is we survive, together. Everything else is details." "You make it sound simple." "It's not, but breaking it down into smaller pieces helps." His hand came up, cupping her cheek with surprising gentleness. "One day at a time, Elara. That's all we can do." She leaned into his touch, feeling the warmth of his palm against her skin. "Stay," she said quietly. "Just for a while. I don't want to be alone tonight." Adrian's expression softened. "Are you sure?" "Yes." He followed her back into her sitting room, settling into one of the chairs by the fire. Elara curled up in the other, still in her wedding dress, and they sat in comfortable silence watching flames dance across logs. "Tell me something true," Elara said finally. "About what?" "You. Something no one else knows."
Adrian was quiet for a long moment. I'm afraid of failure, he said finally. Always have been. That's why I control everything, the estates, the business dealings, the social connections. If I can control it, I can't fail at it.
But you can't control everything. No, which is why you terrify me. His eyes found hers. You're unpredictable. Honest when you should lie. Brave when you should be cautious. Everything I can't control or anticipate. Is that bad? I thought it was. Now? He smiled. Now I think it might be exactly what I need. Elara stood, crossed the space between them, and settled into his lap. Adrian froze. Elara, so what? I'm not asking for anything, she interrupted. I need to feel safe. And somehow you make me feel safe. His arms came around her slowly, carefully. You are safe. I promise you that. They sat like that for hours, her curled against his chest, his arms solid around her, the fire burning low while London slept beyond the windows. And for the first time since the Thornfield ball, Elara felt like maybe, just maybe, she'd made the right choice. The next morning brought chaos. Elara woke to find Adrian already gone, his side of the chair cold. A note sat on the table beside her. Emergency at the estate office. Didn't want to wake you. Breakfast is ready whenever you are. Guards are posted. Stay inside. She dressed quickly and made her way downstairs, following the sounds of voices to a formal dining room. Her family was already there. Mother, father, Beatrice, all looking shell-shocked. What's wrong? Elara demanded. Her father looked up, his face gray. It's Victor. He's filed charges against Adrian. Claims he was assaulted without provocation at Westbrook Chapel. There are witnesses, those men he hired. They're testifying against him. Elara's blood ran cold. That's insane. They kidnapped me. They're claiming they were there to protect you from an unstable suitor, that Adrian attacked unprovoked. Her mother's hands shook. Victor's spinning this as a violent assault by a jealous rival. No one will believe that. Won't they? Beatrice asked quietly. Adrian has a reputation for being cold, ruthless. People are already questioning why he married you so suddenly. This feeds right into doubts about his character. The door burst open. Adrian strode in, his expression thunderous. We have a problem. We know, Elara said. Victor's charges. Worse than that. Adrian threw a newspaper onto the table. The headline screamed in bold print, Duke of Blackthorn accused of violent assault. Bride's mother. Critical after mysterious fire. Elara's vision blurred. What? Your family home, Adrian said, his voice tight. There was a fire last night. Your mother... He looked at Catherine Whitmore, who was very much alive and sitting at the table. Not you. Your mother, Elara, at the estate. The world tilted sideways. My mother is right here, Elara said faintly. Your grandmother, her father corrected, his voice breaking. She was staying at the estate. The fire started in her wing. They got her out, but he couldn't finish. How bad? Elara whispered. Critical. The physicians don't know if she'll survive. This was Victor's retaliation. Had to be. Adrian's hand found hers. I'm going to destroy him. Completely. Permanently. How? He's covered his tracks. Those men will testify to whatever he wants. Then I'll find new witnesses. Real ones. People who know the truth. Adrian's eyes were hard as diamonds. Victor Hale made a mistake. He went after your family. That makes this personal. It was already personal. Now it's war. Before Elara could respond, one of Adrian's servants burst in. Your Grace, the magistrate is here, with constables. They have a warrant for your arrest. The room went silent. Adrian's expression didn't change. On what grounds? Assault against Lord Victor Hale. This is absurd, Elara's father protested. The Duke was protecting my daughter from... The magistrate has witnesses and medical testimony, the servant interrupted. Lord Hale is claiming severe injuries. Adrian stood slowly. Fine, I'll go with them. But Elara stays here, under guard. No one gets near her. Adrian, no. Elara grabbed his arm. He turned, cupping her face in his hands. Listen to me. This is exactly what Hale wants. Chaos, fear, separation. Don't give it to him. Stay here, stay safe, and trust that I will handle this. How? They're arresting you. For now. But I have lawyers, resources. This won't stick. He kissed her, brief but fierce. I'll be back before nightfall. I promise. Then the constables were there, reading charges, leading Adrian away like a common criminal. Elara watched through the window as they put him in a carriage and drove away, her husband of less than 24 hours. Gone. And somewhere in London, Victor Hale was smiling. What do we do? Beatrice whispered. Elara turned from the window, her mind racing. Adrian had said trust him, stay safe, let him handle it. But Elara had never been good at staying safe or letting others fight her battles. We fight back, she said. Adrian's going after Victor through legal channels. That's smart, proper. And what are you going to do? Her father asked warily. Elara's smile was cold. Something improper, something Victor won't see coming. Elara, he tried to kidnap me, burned our estate, got Adrian arrested. He thinks he's won. She looked at her family. We're going to prove him wrong. How? Her mother demanded. By finding the truth about his first wife, the real truth, not rumors or whispers, actual evidence. Elara's hands clenched into fists. Victor Hale made one fatal mistake. What's that? He assumed I'd break, that I'd hide and cry and wait for men to save me. Elara's voice hardened. But I'm the girl who spoke when she shouldn't, who challenged a duke in front of society, who survived a kidnapping. She met her sister's eyes. And I'm done being afraid. Outside, storm clouds gathered over London. Thunder rumbled in the distance. And in the Blackthorn townhouse, a scandalous new duchess began planning a war that would shake the foundations of everything society believed. Absolutely not, her father said for the third time. Elara, you can't possibly think I'll let you— You don't have to let me do anything, Elara interrupted, pacing the length of Adrian's study. I'm not asking permission. I'm telling you what I'm going to do. Thomas Whitmore looked 10 years older than he had that morning. Your husband is in custody. Your grandmother is dying. And you want to go hunting through Victor Hale's past like some kind of investigator? Yes, that's exactly what I want to do. You're a duchess now. You have a position to maintain. Society expects— Society can go to hell, Elara snapped. Victor is destroying us piece by piece while we sit here worrying about propriety. Adrian's lawyers might get him released, but that doesn't stop the whispers. The doubt. The damage Victor's doing to his reputation. Her mother set down her teacup with a sharp clink. And you think you can stop it? One woman against a man with Victor's resources? No. I think I can expose him. There's a difference. Elara stopped pacing, planting her hands on the desk. Victor's first wife died under suspicious circumstances. There were witnesses, servants who saw things, physicians who had questions, but they were all silenced with money or threats. Exactly, her father said. Silenced, which means they won't talk to you either. They might, if approached correctly, if given protection and anonymity. Elara's mind raced. Adrian has resources, guards, legal protections. We can offer them safety in exchange for testimony. Beatrice had been quiet until now, curled in a chair by the window. Where would you even start? Victor's northern estate is days away, and you can't exactly walk up to former servants and start asking about their dead mistress. No, but I can find people who knew her, friends, family, people who might have heard things or seen things they couldn't speak about at the time. That's incredibly dangerous, her mother said flatly. So is doing nothing while Victor burns our lives down around us. A knock at the door interrupted them. One of Adrian's senior servants, a man named Graves with iron gray hair and the bearing of a military officer, entered with a slight bow. Your Grace, forgive the intrusion, but there's someone here asking to speak with you. A woman. She says it's urgent and concerns Lord Hale. Elara's pulse quickened. Who is she? She gave her name as Margaret Hale, Lord Victor's sister. The room went silent. What does she want? Elara's father demanded. She wouldn't say.
only that she needed to speak with the new Duchess immediately, alone. Elara's mother stood. Absolutely not. This could be a trap. Victor could have sent her to what? Attack me in Adrian's own house with guards everywhere? Elara shook her head. If Margaret's here, she came for a reason. I need to know what it is. Then I'm staying with you, Beatrice said firmly. Fine, but everyone else out. Elara looked at Graves. Show her in and have guards posted outside the door. Her parents protested, but Elara was already moving to sit behind Adrian's massive desk, claiming the position of power, even if she felt anything but powerful. Graves returned moments later with Margaret Hale. She looked different than she had at the dinner party. Smaller, somehow. Her expensive clothes hung on her frame like they'd been made for someone else. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. Your Grace, Margaret said, her voice barely above a whisper. Thank you for seeing me. I'm surprised you came. I'm surprised I had the courage. Margaret's hands twisted in her skirts. May I sit? Elara nodded toward a chair. What do you want? To help you destroy my brother. The words dropped like stones. Beatrice inhaled sharply. Elara forced herself to stay calm. Why? She asked carefully. Margaret's laugh was bitter. Because he's a monster. Because I've watched him hurt people my entire life and done nothing to stop it. Because Isabel... Her voice broke. Because Isabel was my friend before she was his wife. And I let her die. You didn't kill her. No. But I didn't save her either. Tears spilled down Margaret's cheeks. She came to me 3 months before she died, showed me the bruises, told me she was afraid, begged me to help her get away. What did you do? Nothing. I told her she was being dramatic, that Victor had a temper, but he loved her, that marriage required patience and understanding. Margaret's voice shook with self-loathing. I said all the things women are taught to say to other women trapped in terrible situations, and then I watched her die. Elara's throat tightened. Margaret! She didn't fall down those stairs. Victor pushed her during an argument. I know because I was there. I heard them fighting, heard Isabel scream, and when I ran in, she was already at the bottom. Margaret looked up, her eyes hollow. He told me it was an accident, that she'd tripped, that if I told anyone differently, he'd destroy me, so I stayed silent. I let the physicians write accidental death, and I stood at her funeral and said nothing. Why are you telling me this now? Because when I saw you at that dinner party, when I saw you refuse to back down, refuse to be intimidated, I thought maybe someone finally had the courage I never did. Margaret leaned forward. And then I heard about the kidnapping attempt, about the fire at your estate, about your husband being arrested. Victor's doing what he always does, destroying anyone who threatens him, and I can't watch it happen again. Beatrice moved closer. What exactly are you offering? Testimony, sworn statements, everything I know about Isabel's death and Victor's history of violence. Margaret pulled a folded packet of papers from her reticule. I've also compiled information on other women, 3 before Isabel, all from families in financial distress, all married to Victor, all dead within 2 years. Elara's blood ran cold. 3 others? His first marriage was when he was 20, to a girl named Sarah Thornton. She died of complications from childbirth, though the baby was perfectly healthy. Then Catherine Mills, influenza that none of the other household members caught. Then Anne Berkshire, riding accident on an estate where Victor controlled everything. Margaret's voice was flat, reciting facts like a grocery list. And then Isabel. 4 dead wives in 15 years, do you know what the odds of that are? Astronomical, Elara breathed. Unless you're killing them. Margaret set the papers on the desk. Everything's in here. Names, dates, physicians who had questions, servants who saw things. Not enough to convict him on its own, but combined with other evidence? Combined with what happened to you? It builds a pattern, Elara finished. A history of violence against women. Exactly. Margaret stood. I can't bring Isabel back, but I can make sure Victor pays for what he did to her, to all of them. If you'll let me help. Elara picked up the papers, scanning the meticulous notes. Why now? Why not go to the authorities yourself? Because I'm his sister. They'll say I'm bitter, jealous,
trying to steal his fortune. But you, Margaret's smile was sad. You're the Duchess of Blackthorn. Your husband has power, influence, resources. And you have something I never had. What's that? A spine. Margaret's expression hardened. Use these. Find the people I've listed. Offer them protection in exchange for testimony. Build a case so strong even Victor's money can't make it disappear. And what about you? What happens when Victor finds out you helped us? He'll try to destroy me. I'm aware. Margaret moved toward the door. But I'd rather die fighting him than live knowing I let him hurt anyone else. She paused at the threshold. One more thing. The fire at your grandmother's estate? Victor has an associate, a man named Thomas Crow. He handles Victor's delicate matters. If you want proof Victor ordered that fire, find Crow. He keeps records. Insurance, he calls it. Then she was gone, leaving Elara holding a bundle of papers that felt like dynamite. Beatrice let out a long breath. Did that actually just happen? I think so. Elara spread the papers across the desk. Names, dates, details that painted a picture of systematic murder dressed as tragedy. This is incredible, Beatrice breathed, reading over her shoulder. With this, we can start building a real case. Elara's hands shook slightly. But we need more. Witness testimony, physical evidence, something that directly connects Victor to Isabel's death and the fire. How? By doing exactly what I said. Finding these people, offering them protection, getting them to talk. Elara looked at her sister. But I can't do it alone. I need help, smart help, someone Victor wouldn't suspect. Beatrice's eyes widened. Oh, no, you're not suggesting. You're 19, unmarried. No one suspects young women of anything more dangerous than gossip. Elara gripped her sister's hands. I need you, Bea. I need someone I trust absolutely. Someone quick and clever who can ask questions without raising alarms. Mother will murder me. Probably, but we'll be saving lives. Doesn't that count for something? Beatrice was quiet for a long moment. Then her expression shifted, from frightened girl to determined woman. What do you need me to do? Over the next 3 days, they worked like women possessed. Elara coordinated from Adrian's study, using his resources and connections to locate the people on Margaret's list. Beatrice became her eyes and ears in society, attending gatherings, chatting with servants, collecting gossip that might lead somewhere useful. Adrian remained in custody, though his lawyers assured Elara he'd be released within days once they demonstrated the charges were fabricated. She visited him twice in the magistrate's holding rooms, brief, chaperoned meetings where they couldn't speak freely, but the way he looked at her said everything: pride, fear, trust. Be careful, he'd whispered during their second visit, his hand finding hers across the table. Victor is dangerous when cornered. So am I, Elara had replied. His smile had been fierce. Yes, you are. Now standing in the borrowed office of Adrian's head lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Mrs. Eleanor Hartwell, who'd made her career destroying powerful men, Elara felt the pieces finally starting to align. We have testimony from 3 former servants, Mrs. Hartwell said, reviewing documents, all willing to swear that Lord Hale was violent toward his late wife. We have medical records showing injuries inconsistent with the official causes of death. And we have Margaret Hale's sworn statement about witnessing Isabel's actual death. Is it enough? Elara asked. For criminal charges? Possibly. For destroying his reputation and credibility? Absolutely. Mrs. Hartwell's smile was predatory. But we're still missing the connection to the fire. Without that, he can claim the assault charges and kidnapping were misunderstandings, domestic matters blown out of proportion. What about this Crow person Margaret mentioned? We're looking for him, but men in Crow's profession know how to disappear. Mrs. Hartwell leaned back in her chair. We need something direct. A witness who saw Crow set the fire. Or better yet, records proving Victor paid him to do it. Elara's mind raced. Crow keeps insurance. That means documentation, papers, ledgers, something proving what he's done for Victor. Hidden somewhere secure, somewhere we'll never find without Crow himself leading us to it. Elara finished. So we need to find him first. Your Grace, with all respect, finding a professional criminal is not within a duchess's skill set? Elara's laugh was sharp. Neither is building a murder case or investigating domestic violence. But here we are. Mrs. Hartwell studied her for a moment. You're quite remarkable, you know. Most women in your position would let the men handle this. Most women in my position end up dead or silenced. Elara stood. I'm choosing a different ending. The break came that evening from an unexpected source. Beatrice burst into the study, her face flushed with excitement. I found him. Crow. I know where he is. How? Elara demanded. Jeffrey Pemberton. At Elara's confused look, Beatrice waved a hand impatiently. I know. Boring as porridge. But his father does business with half the criminal underworld. Property deals, mostly. And Jeffrey overheard his father mention that Crow was lying low at a tavern in Whitechapel. The Broken Crown. Whitechapel. Elara's stomach dropped. The worst part of London. Crime-ridden, dangerous, especially for women. Are you certain? Jeffrey wouldn't lie. He's too honest for his own good. Beatrice's expression turned serious. But Elara, you can't go there. It's not safe, even with guards. Then I'll disguise myself, go in quietly, just long enough to identify Crow and confirm he's there. That's insane. So is everything else we've done this week. Elara was already moving, pulling open drawers in Adrian's desk. Where did Graves say he stored the household expense records? Why do you need— Oh, no. You're not thinking of disguising yourself as a servant. Why not? Servants go everywhere. No one notices them. Elara, if Victor finds out, he won't, because we're going to be smart about this. Elara found what she was looking for, a simple ledger book, and underneath it, a key. This opens the household storage, where they keep old uniforms and supplies. Beatrice grabbed her arm. Please think about this. Adrian will be released tomorrow. Let him handle Crow. By tomorrow, Crow could be gone, and with him, any chance of proving Victor ordered that fire. Elara met her sister's eyes. I know it's dangerous, but so is letting Victor win, and I'm done being careful. An hour later, dressed in a plain brown dress and worn cloak borrowed from the household storage, Elara looked nothing like a duchess. She'd scrubbed the powder from her face, pinned her hair back severely, and adopted the hunched posture of someone used to hard work and harder luck. Beatrice stared at her. This is terrifying. You actually look like a completely different person. That's the point. Elara tucked a small knife into her boot, one of Adrian's, sharp and deadly. If I'm not back in 3 hours, tell Graves where I went. 3 hours? Elara? I'll be fine. I'm just going to observe. Identify Crow. Then we can bring Adrian's guards to actually apprehend him. You promise? I promise. It was a lie, and they both knew it. Whitechapel at night was a study in shadows and desperation. Gas lamps fought losing battles against the darkness. People moved through the streets like ghosts, quick, furtive, eyes down. Elara pulled her cloak tighter and headed for the address Beatrice had given her. The Broken Crown sat on a corner, light and noise spilling from its windows. Music played inside, rough and cheerful, punctuated by laughter and shouting. Elara pushed through the door. The interior was packed with bodies, dock workers, criminals, women in various states of undress selling more than drinks. The air stank of sweat, cheap gin, and desperation. No one looked twice at her, just another poor woman looking for warmth or work or escape. She made her way to the bar, where a massive man with broken teeth eyed her suspiciously. What do you want? Work, Elara said, pitching her voice lower, rougher. Heard you might need serving girls. Do I look like I'm running a charity? The bartender spat on the floor. Get out. I can work hard, don't need much pay, just enough for food and a corner to sleep in. Something in her desperation must have rung true, because the bartender's expression softened fractionally. Fine. See that table in the back? Men have been drinking all evening. Clear their glasses and bring them new rounds. Don't spill, don't talk, don't get grabbed. You do good. Maybe I keep you on. Elara nodded and grabbed a tray. The work was harder than she'd expected. The men at the back table were drunk and handsy, their conversation vulgar enough to make her ears burn. But she kept her head down, collected glasses, brought fresh drinks, and listened. "Telling you, Hale pays well, but he's getting sloppy," one man was saying. "That fire should have looked like an accident. Instead, the old woman nearly died, and now there's questions." Elara's heart stuttered. She moved closer, pretending to wipe down the next table. "Crow did what he was told," another voice said, deeper, calmer. "Fire started in the hearth. Old woman knocked unconscious first so she couldn't escape. Looks like she fell, and the fire spread. That's as accidental as it gets." The first man laughed. "Except she didn't die, and now Hale's in a panic because the Duke's new wife is asking questions. Crow should have made sure of it. Crow did his job. Not his fault the servants got there faster than expected." Elara's hands shook so badly she nearly dropped the tray. This was it. Direct confession. Proof that Victor had ordered the fire. She needed to get out. Get this information to Mrs. Hartwell. To Adrian's guards. She was turning to leave when someone grabbed her wrist. "Where do you think you're going?" The voice belonged to the deeper-toned man, the one who'd defended Crow's work. He yanked her closer, studying her face. "You've been listening awful close for a serving girl." "I'm just doing my job," Elara said, trying to pull free. His grip tightened. "No, you're something else. Your hands are too soft. Your posture's wrong, and you smell like—" He leaned in, inhaling. "Expensive soap." "Who are you?" Panic shot through her system. "No one. I'm no one." "She's lying," the first man said, standing. "Search her." Rough hands patted her down. They found the knife in her boot immediately. Well, what do we have here?" The deeper-voiced man, had to be Crow, smiled. "A spy. How interesting. Who sent you?" "No one sent me. I'm just—" "Don't lie." Crow's hand moved to her throat, not choking but threatening. "You've been listening to things you shouldn't, things that could get men killed. So I'll ask one more time. Who sent you?" Elara's mind raced. If she told the truth, they'd know she was Adrian's wife. They'd use her as leverage, or kill her. If she lied convincingly enough, she might buy time. "I'm a reporter," she said desperately, "for the papers. I heard rumors about Lord Hale and wanted proof." "A reporter," Crow laughed. "In Whitechapel, dressed like a servant. Try again." Before she could answer, the tavern door burst open. Adrian Blackthorne stood in the entrance, flanked by 6 armed guards, looking like vengeance personified. His eyes found Elara's immediately. The relief and fury warring in his expression was terrifying. "Release my wife," he said quietly. "Now." The entire tavern went silent. Crow's hand tightened on Elara's throat. "Your wife? The new Duchess?" His laugh was ugly. "Well, this just got interesting." "You have 5 seconds to let her go," Adrian said, his voice deadly calm. "After that, my guards have orders to shoot." "You won't risk hitting her." "Won't I?" Adrian's smile was cold as winter. "My wife is remarkably resilient. I'm certain she'd survive a minor gunshot wound if it meant destroying Victor Hale's favorite attack dog." Elara made herself meet Adrian's eyes, saw the truth there. He wasn't bluffing. "Crow," she said quietly, "you keep insurance. Records of everything you've done for Victor. Hand them over, and the Duke won't have you killed." "Why would I do that?" "Because Margaret Hale already testified about Isabel's murder. Because we have witnesses to the fire. Because right now you're Victor's accomplice. But if you turn on him," she let the implications hang, "you become a witness instead. That's worth something." Crow's expression flickered, calculation replacing bravado. "What kind of protection are we talking about?" "Immunity from prosecution in exchange for testimony and evidence," Adrian said. "Full relocation to the Americas with enough money to start over. You disappear, Hale goes down, everyone wins." "Except Hale." "Especially Hale," Elara corrected. Crow was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, his hand released her throat. "The records are in a bank box, Threadneedle Street. I'll take you there. But we do this now, tonight, before Hale figures out I've turned." Adrian gestured to his guards. "Secure him, carefully. He's valuable." 2 guards moved forward, flanking Crow with drawn pistols. Adrian crossed the tavern in 4 long strides and pulled Elara into his arms. "You promised," he said against her hair. his voice shaking. "You promised you'd be careful." "I was careful. You were in Whitechapel, in a criminal tavern, with a knife in your boot." He pulled back just enough to see her face. "Do you have any idea what could have happened if I hadn't gotten here in time?" "How did you know where I was?" "Beatrice sent word the moment you left. I was released an hour ago and came straight here." His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. "You're brilliant and brave and absolutely reckless. It's going to give me gray hair." "You're already going gray." "Then you're accelerating the process." But his smile was real, relieved. "Come on, let's go collect evidence and destroy Victor Hale." Threadneedle Street was deserted at this hour. The bank Crow directed them to was closed, but Adrian's name and title got them inside within minutes. A nervous bank manager led them to the vault, where Crow indicated a specific box. "Everything's in there," he said. "Contracts, payment records, letters from Hale detailing exactly what he wanted done and when." The manager opened the box with shaking hands. Inside were neat stacks of papers, organized, detailed, damning. Adrian pulled out the top document and read aloud. "Payment for services rendered Whitmore Estate fire. Ensure no survivors among primary targets." Elara's blood ran cold. Primary targets, meaning her grandmother wasn't an accident. Victor had specifically ordered her killed. "This is enough," Mrs. Hartwell said, appearing from behind them, apparently summoned by Adrian's guards. She flipped through more documents, her expression growing fiercer. "More than enough. This is a complete confession in writing. Combined with Margaret's testimony and the servant's statements, we have a criminal case solid enough that even Victor's money can't touch it." "When can we move?" Adrian demanded. "Tonight. I'll wake the magistrate. We'll have arrest warrants issued by morning." Mrs. Hartwell's smile was savage. "Victor Hale will be in custody before he knows what hit him." The arrest happened at dawn. Elara watched from Adrian's carriage as magistrates and constables surrounded Victor's London residence. They'd expected resistance, hired guards, violence, escape attempts. Instead, Victor opened the door himself, perfectly dressed, completely calm. "Gentlemen," he said pleasantly, "to what do I owe the pleasure?" "Lord Victor Hale, you're under arrest for the murders of Sarah Thornton, Catherine Mills, Anne Berkshire, and Isabel Hale. Additionally, you're charged with attempted murder, arson, and conspiracy to commit violence." Victor's smile never wavered. "Preposterous. I've done nothing of the sort. We have evidence, witnesses, written confessions from your accomplice." The lead magistrate held up Crow's documents. "You're finished, Hale." For just a moment, Victor's mask cracked. His eyes found the carriage where Elara watched, and the hatred in them was pure and absolute. Then it was gone, replaced by that pleasant smile. "I see. Well then, I suppose we'll let the courts decide." He held out his hands for the irons. "Though I maintain my complete innocence." They led him away in chains. Adrian's hand found Elara's in the darkness of the carriage. "It's over." "Is it?" Elara watched Victor's retreating form. "He's still confident, like he has some card left to play." "He doesn't. We've destroyed everything. His reputation, his credibility, his freedom." Adrian squeezed her hand. "You did this. You built the case. You found the evidence. You refused to be intimidated or silenced. We did this. Together." "Yes." Adrian pulled her close. "Together." The trial took 3 weeks. During that time, the scandal consumed London society. Every newspaper ran stories about the charming lord with 4 dead wives. Every gathering buzzed with speculation and horror. Margaret Hale's testimony was devastating, detailed, emotional, impossible to dismiss. The servants' accounts corroborated every accusation. And Crow's evidence provided the final nail in Victor's coffin. Elara attended every day of the trial, sitting in the gallery with Adrian beside her, watching Victor's carefully constructed world collapse. On the final day, when the judge read the guilty verdict, 4 counts of murder, 1 count of attempted murder, multiple counts of assault and conspiracy, Victor finally broke. He lunged at the gallery, screaming threats at Elara that had to be restrained by 4 guards. "You ruined me," he shouted, spittle flying. "You destroyed everything. I'll see you dead for this. The guards dragged him away, still screaming. The judge sentenced him to hang. Outside the courthouse, a crowd had gathered, mostly women, many holding signs. Justice for Isabel. Believe women. No more silence. They cheered when Elara and Adrian emerged. A few shouted thanks. One woman, elderly, bent with age, pressed a flower into Elara's hand. "You gave my granddaughter courage," she said,
"To leave her husband, to speak truth. Thank you." Elara's throat tightened. "I just did what was right. That's more than most people do." The woman squeezed her hand. "You're a credit to that title, Your Grace." Later, back at the townhouse, Elara found herself in the study that had become her war room. Adrian appeared in the doorway, 2 glasses of wine in hand. "Thought you might need this," he said, offering one. "I need something stronger. Give it time. The shaking stops eventually." He settled into the chair beside her. "How are you feeling?" "Honestly, I don't know." Elara took a long drink. Relieved, exhausted, angry that it took 4 dead women before anyone listened. "The system is broken," Adrian agreed. "But you proved it can be beaten, that truth and courage can win, even against power and money. This time. What about next time? The next Victor Hale who thinks he can hurt women without consequence? Then we fight again. You and me, using everything we learned from this." Adrian took her hand. "I've been thinking about the Westbrook estates, the tenant families we displaced." "What about them?" "I'm reinstating them. All of them. Offering compensation for what they lost. And implementing new policies, oversight, protections, accountability." He met her eyes. "You were right. Efficiency without humanity is just cruelty with better accounting." Elara felt tears building. "You're really doing this?" "I'm really doing this. You changed me, Elara. Made me see things I'd ignored for years. I'm not going to waste that gift." "It wasn't a gift. You did the work yourself. With your guidance, your challenge, your refusal to let me hide behind coldness and control." Adrian's thumb brushed across her knuckles. "I love you. I should have said it sooner. Should have said it when you were facing down armed men or building murder cases or being impossibly brave. But I'm saying it now. I love you." The word settled into Elara's chest like warmth spreading through ice. "I love you too," she said. "Even though you're arrogant and controlling and you gave me gray hairs by getting arrested." "Fair." His smile was soft, real. "We're quite a pair, aren't we? Scandalous, argumentative, and apparently effective at destroying evil noblemen." "Every relationship needs hobbies." Elara laughed, surprised it still came so easily after everything. "What now?" she asked. "Victor's done. The trial's over. What do we do with all this energy and anger and need to fix things?" Adrian considered. "We could work on reforming estate management policies, push for legal protections for married women, use our platform to actually change things." "That sounds exhausting and probably futile." "Probably, but also necessary." He leaned in, kissing her softly. "Besides, I've discovered I quite like being married to a woman who won't let me rest on my laurels. Keeps life interesting." Interesting. Is that what we're calling near-death experiences now?" Among other things. A knock interrupted them. Graves appeared, looking apologetic. Your Grace, the papers are requesting comments about the verdict. And there's a delegation from the Women's Legal Aid Society asking if you'd consider speaking at their next meeting." Elara looked at Adrian. "Women's Legal Aid Society? Apparently your testimony during the trial inspired several women to form an advocacy group. They want you as their patron." Adrian's smile was proud. "You're becoming quite the symbol." "I don't want to be a symbol. I just wanted to stop one bad man from hurting people. Sometimes stopping one bad man inspires others to stop the next one. And the next." Graves cleared his throat. "Shall I tell them you'll consider the invitation?" Elara thought about that elderly woman with the flower, about Margaret finding courage, about servants finally safe to tell the truth, about all the women who'd stayed silent because speaking up seemed impossible. "Tell them yes," she said. "I'll speak, and I'll do whatever I can to help their cause." Graves nodded and withdrew. Adrian raised his glass. "To the Duchess of Blackthorn, scandal, reformer, and absolute terror to evil men everywhere."
Elara clinked her glass against his. To partnership. Real partnership. Where we make each other better instead of just making each other miserable. I'll drink to that. They sat in comfortable silence, watching firelight dance across the study walls. Outside, London continued its eternal churn, gossip and scandal and social machinations that would create new problems, new challenges, new fights to fight. But for now, in this moment, they'd won. Victor Hale would hang for his crimes. Margaret had found redemption through courage. The displaced families would get their homes back. And Elara Whitmore, the girl who'd spoken when she shouldn't, had proved that sometimes speaking truth to power actually worked. It just required being willing to fight for it. Thank you, Adrian said quietly. For what? For challenging me at that ball. For refusing to accept my cruelty. For being brave enough to see me as something more than my worst moment. His hand found hers. You saved me. In every way someone can be saved. We saved each other, Elara corrected. That's what partners do. And in the growing darkness, surrounded by evidence of battles won and wars still to fight, the Duke and Duchess of Blackthorn began planning their next move. Because one victory didn't change a broken system, but it proved the system could be changed, and that was enough to start with. 3 months after Victor Hale's execution, Elara stood in the ballroom of Blackthorn Manor, the northern estate Adrian had avoided for years, and watched workers hang the final banner for the Women's Legal Aid Society inaugural gala. It's crooked, she called up to the man on the ladder. It's fine, Your Grace, Beatrice said, appearing at her elbow with a clipboard. Stop micromanaging. You're making everyone nervous. I'm not micromanaging. I'm ensuring quality control. You've checked that banner 6 times. It's perfect. Beatrice consulted her notes. We have confirmations from 200 guests. The musicians arrive in an hour. The kitchen reports dinner preparations are on schedule. Everything is under control. Elara took a deep breath. Right, under control. Absolutely. You're terrified, Beatrice observed. I'm hosting the most important social event of the season to launch a legal advocacy organization that half of society thinks is radical and dangerous. Of course I'm terrified. Then you're hiding it well. You look like a duchess who has everything figured out. Appearances are deceiving. Adrian emerged from the library, adjusting his cufflinks. Even after 3 months of marriage, the sight of him still made Elara's pulse quicken, though now it was tempered with familiarity, affection, the comfortable certainty of partnership. The final donor pledges just came through, he said, crossing to kiss her cheek. We've exceeded our fundraising goal by 40%. That's incredible. That's you. People believe in this cause because you made them believe. His hand found the small of her back. How are you holding up? Ask me after tonight. Tonight will be perfect. You've planned every detail. That's what worries me. When things are planned perfectly, that's usually when disaster strikes. As if summoned by her words, Graves appeared in the doorway, his expression carefully neutral. Your Grace? There's a situation requiring your attention. Elara's stomach dropped. What kind of situation? Lady Pemberton has arrived early, with her entire family and several uninvited guests. She's demanding to speak with you immediately about the appropriateness of tonight's event. Of course she is. Elara straightened her shoulders. Where is she? The East Drawing Room. I've provided refreshments, but she's becoming rather vocal about her concerns. Adrian's expression hardened. I'll handle this. No. Elara put a hand on his arm. This is exactly the kind of confrontation we knew was coming. Let me deal with it. Are you certain? Positive. Besides, you need to finish reviewing the pledge agreements. She kissed him quickly. Trust me. His smile was slight but genuine. Always. Lady Pemberton had taken over the drawing room like a conquering army. She sat in the largest chair, her substantial frame radiating disapproval, while her husband hovered nervously by the window and Geoffrey tried to make himself invisible in a corner. Your Grace, Lady Pemberton said, not bothering to rise. How kind of you to finally appear. Lady Pemberton, I wasn't expecting you for another 3 hours. Elara settled into the chair opposite, claiming equal ground. To what do I owe this early arrival? I came to give you one final opportunity to cancel this travesty. The gala is hardly a travesty. It's a fundraiser for legal advocacy. It's an assault on the natural order of society.
Lady Pemberton's jowls quivered with indignation. Encouraging women to question their husbands, challenge authority, pursue legal action over domestic matters, it's obscene. It's necessary, Elara corrected calmly. 4 women died because people like you thought domestic matters should stay private. How many more deaths before we admit the system is broken? The Hale situation was an aberration. One bad man doesn't justify upending centuries of tradition. It wasn't one bad man. It was 4 dead women, dozens of traumatized servants, and a society that looked the other way because tradition mattered more than lives. Elara leaned forward. I'm not upending tradition, Lady Pemberton. I'm suggesting we add accountability to it. By teaching women to be ungrateful, disobedient, and litigious, by teaching them they have rights, that marriage isn't a license for abuse, that speaking truth isn't a crime. Lady Pemberton's face flushed purple. You speak as if you're some kind of expert on marriage. You've been wed all of 3 months to a man who married you out of guilt and scandal. The jab landed exactly where it was meant to. Elara felt the familiar anger rising, the same fury that had driven her to challenge Adrian at that first ball. But this time, she controlled it, channeled it. You're right, she said quietly. I've only been married 3 months, but in that time I've learned something crucial about partnerships. And what's that? That real strength isn't dominance, it's mutual respect. My husband doesn't control me because I'm his possession. He partners with me because we're equals. Elara stood. And if that threatens your worldview, Lady Pemberton, then perhaps your worldview deserves to be threatened. How dare you? No! How dare you come into my home and tell me I'm wrong for trying to save lives, for giving women options beyond suffering in silence or dying in staircases? Elara's voice remained level, but steel ran through it. You can either support this cause or oppose it. But if you oppose it, I suggest you leave now, because tonight this ballroom will be full of people who believe women deserve better than what tradition has given them. Lady Pemberton sputtered. The Duchess of Ashford will hear about this. Lady Hertford, every woman of quality in London will make their own decisions, just like I'm making mine. Elara moved to the door, opening it deliberately. You're welcome to stay for the gala if you can find it in yourself to be civil, but if you're here to cause problems, I'll have Graves escort you out. For a long moment, Lady Pemberton looked like she might actually explode. Then, to everyone's shock, Geoffrey spoke up from his corner. Mother, she's right. All heads turned toward him. Geoffrey's face was red, but his voice was steady. Miss Whitmore, Her Grace, she's right. What happened to those women was wrong. And if we keep pretending it wasn't, we're just as guilty as the men who hurt them. Geoffrey Pemberton, you will not. I will, Mother, because someone has to. Geoffrey stood, drawing himself up to his full height. I think what the Duchess is doing is brave, and I think you're wrong to oppose it. The silence was deafening. Lord Pemberton cleared his throat. Perhaps, my dear, we should consider— Fine, Lady Pemberton bit out. She stood with visible effort. We'll attend your little gala, Your Grace, but don't expect my endorsement. I don't need your endorsement, Elara said. Just your civility. After they left, Elara sagged against the door frame. Beatrice rushed in. I heard shouting. Are you all right? Geoffrey Pemberton just stood up to his mother for women's rights. Geoffrey? Boring Geoffrey? Apparently he has hidden depths. Elara laughed, slightly hysterical but genuine. Who knew? You did. You saw something worth defending in this cause, and somehow you made other people see it too. Beatrice hugged her. You're changing things, Elara, actually changing them. One angry conversation at a time. That's how all real change happens. The gala began at 8 o'clock sharp. Guests flooded into Blackthorn Manor in waves, some genuinely supportive, others clearly curious about the scandal, a few openly hostile, but too well-mannered to cause scenes. Elara stood in the receiving line beside Adrian, greeting each arrival with practiced grace. Caroline Hertford came through with her parents, her expression caught between jealousy and grudging respect. Your Grace, she said, curtsying just deep enough to be proper. Quite the undertaking. I'm surprised you managed to convince society to support something so
controversial. People support causes that matter, Elara replied evenly, once they understand what's at stake. Or they support causes that powerful people endorse. Caroline's gaze flickered to Adrian. Having the Duke's backing certainly helps. It does, but I'd do this with or without it. Something shifted in Caroline's expression. I believe you would. She paused. For what it's worth, what you did with the Hale investigation, exposing him, seeing justice served, that took real courage. I'm not certain I could have done the same. You could have. Most people can if the stakes are high enough. Perhaps. Caroline moved along, leaving Elara slightly stunned. Did Caroline Hartford just compliment you? Adrian murmured. I think she did. The world really is changing. Dinner was served in the grand ballroom, 200 guests at carefully arranged tables, eating food prepared by Adrian's expanded kitchen staff, while musicians played soft background melodies. Elara barely tasted her meal. She was too busy watching faces, reading reactions, gauging the mood. Some tables were animated with passionate discussion. Others looked uncomfortable, conversation stilted. But no one left. That had to count for something. After dinner, Elara stood to speak. The room fell silent, 200 pairs of eyes turning toward her with varying degrees of interest and skepticism. For a moment, she was back in that ballroom at Thornfield Manor, speaking out against Adrian while society watched with scandalized delight. But this time was different. This time, she wasn't speaking from anger or impulse. She was speaking from purpose. Thank you all for coming tonight, she began, her voice carrying across the room. I know many of you are here out of curiosity. Some of you are here out of genuine support, and a few of you are here hoping I'll embarrass myself spectacularly. Scattered laughter rippled through the crowd. I won't apologize for being controversial, for challenging traditions that harm people, for believing women deserve legal protections and social support when marriage becomes dangerous. Elara's hands gripped the podium. 3 months ago, I helped prosecute a man who murdered 4 wives. 4 women from respectable families. Women who suffered in silence because society told them suffering was part of marriage, part of duty. The room was utterly silent now. Those women are dead because no one gave them alternatives. No one told them they had rights. No one believed them when they asked for help. Elara's voice strengthened. The Women's Legal Aid Society exists to change that, to provide legal counsel to women in dangerous situations, to educate communities about domestic violence, to create support systems so women don't have to choose between suffering and destitution. She paused, letting the words settle. Some of you think this is radical, unnecessary, an attack on marriage and family values. Elara's gaze swept the room. But I'd argue that true family values include safety, respect, and equality, that a marriage built on fear and violence isn't worth preserving, that protecting women isn't attacking men, it's demanding all people be treated with basic human dignity. A few people shifted uncomfortably, but others nodded. Tonight, we're asking for your support. Financial contributions, yes, those help immensely, but also social support. Speak up when you see abuse. Believe women when they report violence. Demand accountability from men who harm their wives. Elara's voice dropped. Because the next Victor Hale is probably sitting in someone's parlor right now, and the next victim is probably suffering in silence. We can stop that. Together, if we're brave enough to try. She stepped back from the podium. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then someone started clapping. Margaret Hale, sitting near the front, rose to her feet and applauded with tears streaming down her face. Others joined her. Slowly at first, then building, a wave of sound that filled the ballroom. Not everyone clapped. Lady Pemberton sat stone-faced. Several older gentlemen looked furious, but enough people stood. Enough people believed. Adrian appeared at Elara's side, his hand finding hers. You did it, he said quietly. We did it. No, this was you, your vision, your courage. He kissed her temple. I'm just along for the revolution. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of conversations and pledges. People wanted to share their stories, women who'd escaped dangerous marriages, men who'd lost sisters or daughters to violence, families torn apart by abuse that no one had stopped. By midnight, when the last guests finally departed, Elara was exhausted but exhilarated. She
She and Adrian stood alone in the empty ballroom, surveying the remnants of the evening. "The final accounting came in," Adrian said. "Between donations and pledges, we raised enough to fund the society for 2 full years, plus establish satellite offices in 3 major cities. That's incredible. That's you. You made people care." He pulled her close. "I have something for you."
Adrian, you've already given me everything. Not this. He produced a folded document from his jacket. "I've been working with Mrs. Hartwell on legislative proposals. Legal reforms that would give married women property rights, divorce protections, child custody considerations." Elara took the document with shaking hands. This is comprehensive, radical. It's necessary. And it has backing from several parliament members who attended tonight. Adrian's smile was fierce. "We're going to change the laws, Elara. Actually change them. Make it so the next woman in danger has legal recourse instead of just hope. How long will this take? Years, probably. There will be opposition, setbacks, fights we'll lose before we win anything." His hands framed her face. "But we'll keep fighting, because that's what we do." Elara kissed him, deep and grateful, and full of love that had grown from strategy into something real and unshakable. "Thank you," she whispered, "for believing in this. In me. Thank you for teaching me what's worth believing in." A month later, Elara received word that her grandmother had finally woken from her coma. She made the journey to the family estate immediately, Adrian beside her, her heart in her throat the entire way. The house looked different than she remembered. Repairs had been made. New roof sections, replaced windows, fresh paint covering the smoke damage. Adrian had paid for all of it, refusing to discuss reimbursement. Her grandmother was in her bedroom, propped up on pillows, looking impossibly frail but undeniably alive. "Elara," she said, her voice papery but warm. "They tell me you've been causing trouble." "Always," Elara said, settling into the chair beside the bed. "How are you feeling?" "Like I was hit by a carriage and left for dead, but alive, which is more than Victor Hale can say." Her grandmother's eyes were sharp despite her weakness. "I heard about the trial, about what you did. I just told the truth. You did more than that. You changed things." Her grandmother's weathered hand found Elara's. "I'm proud of you. Your mother may never say it, but I will. You saw injustice and you fought it. Consequences be damned. That's the woman I raised you to be." Elara's throat tightened. "I thought you might disapprove. The scandal." "Scandal is just change that makes people uncomfortable. Let them be uncomfortable." Her grandmother squeezed her hand. "Now tell me about this duke you married. Is he treating you well?" "Better than well. He's my partner, my equal." "Good. Because if he wasn't, I'd rise from this sickbed and box his ears." The fierce glint in her grandmother's eyes made Elara laugh. They talked for hours, about the society, the reforms, the future they were building. When Elara finally left, her grandmother was sleeping peacefully, color returning to her cheeks. "She's going to be all right," the physician confirmed in the hallway. "Full recovery expected within a few months." Relief crashed over Elara so intensely she had to lean against the wall. Adrian steadied her. "Breathe. She's safe. Everyone's safe. Victor's dead. My grandmother's recovering. The society is funded. The reforms are moving forward." Elara looked up at him. "Why does it feel like we're waiting for the other shoe to drop?" "Because we're both waiting for something to go wrong. That's what happens when you've fought hard for everything. You stop believing in easy victories." "Is that what this is? A victory?" "Yes. Messy, imperfect, still requiring work, but a victory nonetheless." Adrian pulled her close. "And we earned it." 6 months after the gala, the first legal reforms passed Parliament. They were smaller than what Adrian and Mrs. Hartwell had proposed: limited property rights for married women, enhanced protections against physical abuse, preliminary frameworks for divorce proceedings in cases of documented violence. But they were a start, and starts mattered. Elara stood in the gallery of Parliament, watching old men debate laws that would save women's lives, and felt something shift in her chest. This was real change, slow, frustrating, insufficient, but real. Beatrice sat beside her, holding her hand. "We did it."
Parliament did it. Because you made them. Because you refused to let Victor's death be the end of the story. Beatrice's eyes shone with tears. You changed the world, Elara. Actually changed it. We changed a small piece of it. There's still so much work to do. Then we'll keep working. When the final vote was tallied, narrow victory, but victory nonetheless, the gallery erupted in applause. Not everyone clapped. Some women sat silent, clearly opposed. But enough people stood. Enough people believed. And that belief was spreading. That evening, Elara and Adrian hosted a small dinner at Blackthorn Manor.
Just family. Elara's parents and Beatrice, Margaret Hale, who'd become a close friend, Mrs. Hartwell, and a few of the Parliament members who'd championed the reforms. To new beginnings, Adrian said, raising his glass, and the remarkable woman who made them possible. To partnerships, Elara corrected, standing beside him. To everyone who fought for this, who believed change was possible even when it seemed impossible. To the girl who spoke when she shouldn't, Margaret added, her smile bittersweet, and proved that sometimes speaking up is the only way to survive. They drank to that, to courage and change and the messy, difficult work of making the world slightly better. Later, when the guests had departed and the house was quiet, Elara found herself in the library with Adrian. He was reviewing estate reports. She was drafting a proposal for expanding the society's reach. Domestic. Comfortable. Utterly ordinary. And perfect. What are you smiling about? Adrian asked, looking up from his papers. This. Us. The fact that we're spending our evening working on separate projects in the same room and it feels romantic. That's marriage. Good marriage, Elara corrected. The kind built on mutual respect instead of obligation. Adrian set aside his reports and crossed to her desk. Do you ever regret it, speaking out that night at Thornfield? Everything that followed? Elara considered the question seriously. That night had destroyed her reputation, led to kidnapping attempts and murder investigations and social ostracism, changed her entire life in ways she couldn't have predicted. No, she said finally. I regret that it took so long, that 4 women died before anyone listened, that the system is still broken in so many ways. She stood, moving into Adrian's arms. But I don't regret speaking truth, or fighting for justice, or marrying you. But even though I was a complete bastard to you? Especially because of that. You prove people can change, that being wrong doesn't mean staying wrong. She kissed him softly. We're both better than we were. That's worth everything we went through. I love you, Adrian said. Simple, certain. I love you too, even when you're insufferable. Especially when I'm insufferable. That too. They stood together in the library, surrounded by books and papers and the quiet evidence of lives being built rather than just survived. Outside, London continued its eternal rhythm, gossip and scandal and social hierarchies that would take decades to truly change. But inside Blackthorn Manor, 2 people who'd found each other through conflict and scandal were proving that change was possible, one conversation at a time, one law at a time, one life saved at a time. A year after Victor Hale's execution, Elara returned to Thornfield Manor for the first time since that disastrous ball. Lady Thornfield was hosting another music hall, this one explicitly supporting the Women's Legal Aid Society. Full circle, Beatrice observed as their carriage approached the familiar entrance. Almost, Elara said. Last time I was here, I was ruined and desperate. This time, you're a duchess who changed the law and saved countless lives. Slight upgrade. The ballroom looked the same chandeliers, the same expensive decorations, the same carefully arranged social hierarchy. But when Elara entered on Adrian's arm, the response was completely different. People didn't whisper scandalized gossip. They applauded. Not everyone. Lady Pemberton still looked like she'd swallowed something sour. A few older aristocrats maintained stony disapproval. But enough people clapped, enough people smiled, enough people had changed their minds. Caroline Hartford approached during the intermission, her expression carefully neutral. Your Grace, I wanted to say, she paused, choosing words carefully. What you've accomplished with the society is remarkable. I've been following the news, the women you've helped, the reforms you've pushed through. Thank you, Elara said, genuinely surprised. I also wanted to apologize for how I treated you before.
Caroline's voice dropped. I was cruel because I was jealous. You were brave enough to speak truth, and I resented you for it. You don't need to apologize. I do. Because I spent years tearing down other women instead of supporting them. That's exactly what you're fighting against. Caroline met her eyes. I'd like to help, if you'll let me. The society, the advocacy work, I have resources, connections, and I'm tired of using them for petty social climbing. Elara studied her for a moment, looking for deception. She found only sincerity. We could use help, she said finally. There's always more work than workers. Caroline's smile was genuine. Good. I'll contact Mrs. Hartwell this week to discuss specifics. After she left, Adrian appeared with champagne. Caroline Hartford just offered to help the society, Elara said, still slightly stunned. People change. You proved that. I didn't change Caroline. She changed herself. Because you showed her an alternative to the person she was. Adrian handed her a glass. That's leadership, Elara. Not forcing change, inspiring it. Later that evening, Lady Thornfield asked Elara to speak. She stood in the same spot where she'd challenged Adrian a year ago, looking out at many of the same faces. A year ago, she began, I stood in this room and spoke out against injustice. I was angry and impulsive, and I paid dearly for that moment of honesty. The room was utterly silent. But I'd do it again, because that moment taught me something crucial. That change requires courage, yes, but also persistence. One speech doesn't reform a system. One law doesn't solve every problem. Real change is slow, frustrating work that requires showing up every single day and fighting even when you're exhausted. She paused, letting the words settle. The Women's Legal Aid Society has helped over 300 women in the past year. We've pushed through preliminary legal reforms. We've started conversations about domestic violence and women's rights in spaces where those topics were once forbidden. Elara's voice strengthened. But we're just beginning. There are still women suffering in silence, still laws that need changing, still minds that need opening. Her gaze swept the room, finding allies and opponents alike. So I'm asking you, all of you, to join this fight. Not because it's easy or popular, but because it's necessary. Because every woman deserves safety, dignity, and legal protection. Because marriage should be partnership, not prison. She stepped back. The applause that followed was louder than before, more certain. And this time, even Lady Pemberton was clapping, reluctantly, but clapping nonetheless. Adrian was waiting when she descended from the small stage. You're extraordinary, he said quietly. I'm persistent. There's a difference. No, there really isn't. That night, as they rode home through London's gaslit streets, Elara reflected on how much had changed. A year ago, she'd been desperate and ruined. Now she was a duchess, an advocate, a voice for women who couldn't speak for themselves. But more than that, she was happy. Not the perfect, uncomplicated happiness of fairy tales, but the messy, hard-won happiness of people who'd fought for their partnership and built something real from the ashes of scandal. What are you thinking? Adrian asked. That I love you, that I love the work we're doing, that I'm grateful for everything, even the hard parts. Especially the hard parts, Adrian corrected. They made us who we are. Who are we? Adrian considered. Partners, reformers, two people who refuse to accept that the world can't be better than it is. That's a lot of identity for one couple. We're a lot of couple. Elara laughed, genuine and joyful and free. 5 years later, Elara stood in the chambers of Parliament, watching as the Married Women's Property Act passed its final reading, full property rights for married women. Legal independence, the right to keep earnings, inherit property, and control their own finances regardless of marital status. It was everything they'd fought for, and it had taken 5 years of advocacy, lobbying, public speaking, and relentless pressure. But it passed. Adrian stood in the gallery beside her, his hand in hers, tears in his eyes. We did it, he whispered. We did it, Elara confirmed. Around them, women wept openly. Men who'd supported the cause embraced. Even some of the initial opponents looked moved by the historic moment. Elara thought about Isabel, Sarah, Catherine, Anne, the 4 women who died before justice caught up to Victor Hale. This law wouldn't bring them back, but it might save the next Isabel, and the next, and the next. That night, they celebrated at Blackthorn Manor with everyone who'd fought for the reforms. Margaret was there, now the society's primary administrator. Mrs. Hartwell, whose legal expertise had shaped every proposal. Beatrice, who'd become a vocal advocate in her own right. Caroline Hartford, who'd used her social connections to sway influential families. Geoffrey Pemberton, who'd quietly funded several of the society's initiatives. Even Lady Pemberton attended, though she still looked vaguely uncomfortable with the entire enterprise. To persistence, Elara toasted, to everyone who believed change was possible even when it seemed impossible. To the girl who spoke when she shouldn't, Margaret added, her voice thick with emotion.
And taught us all that speaking up is the only way to survive. They drank to that, to courage, change, and the slow, difficult work of making the world better. Later, Elara found herself in the garden with Adrian, watching stars appear over the estate. "Do you remember that first night at Thornfield?" she asked, "when I challenged you in front of everyone? I remember thinking you were the most infuriating woman I'd ever met. And now? Now I think you're the most infuriating woman I've ever met, and also the most remarkable." Adrian pulled her close. "You changed me, Elara, changed how I see the world, made me better than I had any right to become. We changed each other. That's what partnerships do. Is that what we are? A partnership? Among other things, we're also a scandal that became respectable, a strategic alliance that became love. 2 stubborn people who refused to accept the world as it was and decided to remake it." Adrian kissed her, soft and certain, tasting of champagne and promises kept. "I love you," he said. 5 years later, and I still can't quite believe you chose me. I chose us, the possibility of what we could become together." Elara rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "And I'd choose it again, every single time." They stood together in the garden, surrounded by the evidence of battles won and wars still to fight. Because one law didn't fix everything, but it proved the system could be changed, and change, once started, had a way of spreading. 10 years after that first disastrous ball, Elara Whitmore, now Duchess of Blackthorn, founder of the Women's Legal Aid Society, and the voice behind 3 major legislative reforms, stood before a crowd of 5,000 women in Hyde Park. It was the first public rally for women's suffrage, and Elara had been asked to speak. 10 years ago, she began, her voice carrying across the crowd, I was told that speaking truth to power would ruin me, that women should stay silent, accept their place, never question authority. The crowd was utterly silent. And they were right. Speaking truth did ruin me. My reputation was destroyed. My family nearly lost everything. I was kidnapped, threatened, and attacked for daring to challenge the system. She paused, letting the words settle. But something remarkable happened in that ruin. I discovered who I actually was, not who society told me to be, not the quiet, obedient girl who accepted injustice, but a woman who believed truth mattered more than comfort, who thought lives were worth more than tradition, who refused to stay silent while people suffered. Elara's voice strengthened. That discovery led to everything that followed: legal reforms, the Women's Legal Aid Society, protections for married women, and now, she gestured to the massive crowd, now we're here, demanding the vote, demanding full citizenship, demanding that society recognize women as equal participants rather than decorative obligations. The crowd erupted in cheers. They'll say we're radical, dangerous, that we're destroying the fabric of civilization. Elara smiled. Let them. Because real change has always looked radical to people invested in the status quo. And we're not here to comfort the comfortable. We're here to liberate the oppressed. The applause was deafening. So I ask you, all of you, to keep fighting. Keep speaking truth even when it's dangerous. Keep demanding justice even when it seems impossible. Keep believing that the world can be better than it is. She raised her fist. Because we are the change we've been waiting for. And together, we're unstoppable. The crowd roared its approval. 5,000 voices raised in unison, demanding a future they'd build themselves. Adrian stood at the edge of the crowd, watching his wife inspire a movement, and felt pride so fierce it bordered on pain. This was the woman he'd once dismissed as unmarriageable, the woman who'd proven him wrong about everything, the woman who'd changed his life, changed the law, and was now changing the world. When Elara descended from the platform, he was waiting. "You were magnificent," he said. "We were magnificent. This entire movement, it's built on the work we started together. You started it. I just learned to stop getting in your way." Elara laughed. "You did more than that. You amplified my voice, used your power to open doors, proved that men can be allies rather than obstacles. Is that what I am? An ally? Among other things, you're also my partner, my love, the person who saw past my worst moment and found something worth fighting for." Adrian kissed her, deep and certain and full of a decade's worth of love and partnership. "What's next?" he asked. After suffrage, education reform, labor protections, healthcare access. Elara's eyes gleamed with determination. "There's always another fight." "Then we'll fight it, together. Always together." They walked through Hyde Park hand in hand, surrounded by women who'd found their voices and men who'd learned to listen. The world was changing, slowly, imperfectly, with setbacks and failures mixed in with victories, but changing nonetheless. And at the center of it all was a woman who'd once been told she was unmarriageable, unsuitable, too outspoken for her own good. A woman who'd proven that sometimes the most unsuitable person for the world as it is becomes exactly the right person for the world as it should be. Elara Whitmore had spoken when she shouldn't, and in doing so, she'd given voice to thousands who'd been silent too long. That was her legacy, not perfection, not easy victories, but courage that inspired more courage, truth that demanded more truth, and love, fierce, partnered, equal love, that proved change was possible when people chose to fight for it together. The sun set over London, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold, and in that light, a duchess and a duke who'd found each other through scandal walked toward a future they were building with their own hands, together, always together. Because that's what real partnerships did. They survived the storm. They rebuilt from the ashes, and they proved that the world could be better than it was, one brave choice at a time.